Chapter 995. The grass was lush, and the river was like a jade belt. The secret realm was calm and peaceful, and there was no sense of tension or danger. Chu Feng entered and surveyed the scene in front of him. It was actually a lush grassland with no precipitous mountains or abyss seething with baleful aura. Of course, this was only on the surface. How could the secret realm that was separated from the Yang realm be a smooth road? There were bound to be dangers. Many people came in. Some let out a long whistle and waved at the entrance of the secret realm, intending to bid farewell and enter the Yang realm. There were also some who were relaxed and didn't care, as they had enough confidence. "Elder sister, let's go," the silver-haired little Lolita from the quasi-saint race urged. After being unhappy for more than a year, she was now a bit lively again. She was bouncing around and swinging her silver hair. Behind her was Ying Zhixian. Her figure was slender and graceful as she walked over. She had a head of sparkling silver hair that fell to her waist. Her skin was creamy, her eyes were like stars, her lips were red, and her nose was high. Her entire being had an otherworldly temperament, as if she didn't belong to this world. She transcended above and matched her name of being above the common populace. Behind her was Ying Wudi. He was tall and straight. After not seeing him for more than a year, he had become more and more stable. After not seeing Chu Feng, his face was no longer dark and was like a crown of jade. Chu Feng sighed. A year ago, they were all in the Yin realm, but now they had to work hard to enter the Yang realm. Apart from the three from the Ying family, he saw too many people who entered this secret realm. They were all old friends, but he didn't need to worry about them, as they had their own clans behind them. The Yin realm's Arhut, Shi Hong, came and chatted happily with Chu Feng. In the end, he sighed and said, "I don't know why, but I feel like old friends when I'm with Brother Shi." Chu Feng nodded to express his approval. He had almost gotten rid of this Arhut in the foreign realm. "This is really strange. Dao brother, did we know each other before? Why we seem to know each other?" A young Taoist walked over and was full of doubt towards Chu Feng. Jin Lin, the #1 descendant of the Yin realm universe's Tao race. Chu Feng smiled and nodded at him. In the foreign realm, he seized a wisp of Jin Lin's metal attribute rare material and fused it into his own body. He even almost killed Jin Lin. The Tao race had a deep foundation, and in the end, they managed to save his remnant soul and restore it. Chu Feng sent off a group of people. Last time, he protected them as they passed through the wooden city. But now that he saw a group of old friends again, he sighed softly. The geniuses of the Yin realm cosmos were really missing out. This generation was going to be empty. Not long after, he saw a person. She was very beautiful and had the temperament of a star. Not only was she an old friend from the underworld, but she was also from Earth. She was the national goddess of the past, Jiang Luoshen, who had disappeared for a long time. Shi Hong was elegant and handsome. He was dressed in white, and when he saw Chu Feng's appearance, he smiled and said, "Brother Shi, it's not too good for you to stare at my junior sister like that. My uncle master is also there, and his temper isn't good." Beside Jiang Luoshen was an old monk. He had a ruddy complexion, a tall stature, and long white eyebrows. Shi Hong addressed him as Uncle Bajie. Chu Feng felt his teeth ache. It was exactly the same as the news he had received on Earth. Jiang Luoshen had left with a Buddha-worshipping expert, but why did this great master's name sound so awkward? Seeing Jiang Luoshen, Chu Feng naturally thought of some people and matters. Many people had seen her and knew her whereabouts. He sighed softly as he thought of Linoi. She had left Mount Lao back then and came into contact with the evolvers of the Yang realm before anyone else. Now, she had long since entered the Yang realm great world. Chu Feng exhaled softly. He didn't know what year they would meet again and what kind of position they would face each other from. "Everyone, there's not much time left. The trial has already begun. Once you reach the end, you'll enter the Yang realm. Do your best." Someone shouted and announced that they could begin the trial. At the end of this secret realm was a resplendent passageway that connected to the Yang realm. Very soon, there were many figures on the prairie. Apart from those who had been brought over from the Yin realm, there were also large numbers of evolvers from the dilapidated universe who had poured in. Some people had come on behalf of their clans. They could bring their clans with them if they passed, so they were very desperate. In a split second, miserable cries rang out. Some people actually attacked the people around them just to eliminate their competitors. They were full of malice and bloodthirst. For a moment, the verdant prairie was in chaos. Buzz, divine light surged and snow-white wings unfolded. A six-winged god crossed the sky and entered the secret realm. He looked down at the boundless prairie, and several people appeared in a short while. Additionally, there was a silver-robed divine king with unfathomable strength. Although he had restrained his aura, he still caused the world to rumble. There were also records of humanoid beings covered in golden scales. Their faces were flat, and they only had a single eye. They were currently shooting out terrifying beams of light from their single vertical eye, sweeping over everyone and patrolling the secret realm. Chu Feng was astonished. He had killed 2 groups of people, yet there were still experts of this level. Very soon, he realized that these might be new gods from the Yang realm. Otherwise, there definitely wouldn't be so many. He had almost killed all the gods left in the dilapidated universe. As expected, a dozen or so gods appeared. Some were dignified, and some had smiles on their faces as they descended on the prairie. They were like imperial bodyguards that made preparations in advance for some great figures. Not long after, the world actually trembled and then returned to silence. A formidable evolver had appeared. A young man of medium height with a head of long blue hair and bright eyes suddenly appeared in the secret realm. His appearance actually caused the order of this place to become unstable. The world trembled slightly, and even though it quickly returned to silence, the moment just now was too oppressive. This is the 97th ranked god in the Yang realm. In the distance, there were people from the Yang realm whispering. This was a true heaven-warping genius that had personally arrived in the dilapidated universe. Silence. There are other great figures coming. In reality, at almost the same time, the world trembled and Tao sounds rumbled. A man with long red hair appeared. His body was slender and strong, and his skin was snow-white like jade. He carried primal chaos energy and appeared extremely terrifying. The 8th god under the heavens. At this moment, even the silver-robed divine king that appeared earlier couldn't help but be moved. It was because he knew that this terrifying heaven-warping figure was coming that he came to take a look. Light and shadow flickered. Apart from the deity who had been ranked in the top 100 before, 2 other goddesses appeared as well. Some people from the Yang realm recognized that they were also goddesses with extremely high rankings. However, when facing the 8th god, their attitudes were very low, as if they wanted to be a maid. Meanwhile, the people from the Yang realm were shaken. Those 2 goddesses were powerful enough to rank within the top 300 in the vast world of the Yang realm. Moreover, they were charming and moving. This is the might of the 8th god. The followers and maids at their sides are all ranked at the top. They are incomparably terrifying. The people of the Yang realm were all sighing. Sigh, the 8th god can even kill divine kings without any problems. She's a heaven-warping genius. You can't help but be convinced. Chu Feng listened to these people's discussions and felt rather astonished. He looked at the red-haired man, surrounded by primal chaos energy, and felt restraining fear in his heart. This was a terrifying figure. There are too many people. How can we not see blood? Beside the 8th god, the 97th ranked person spoke with an indifferent voice. This kind of argument made many people's hearts sink. Was this going to be a major event? 100 vying barges. It's good to have competition. The 8th god personally spoke. He was calm and indifferent. He wanted to choose some outstanding Yin realm people and had come with a purpose. Bang! Everyone was on guard against each other as they rushed into the depths of the prairie. The competition had begun. They used all kinds of methods to enter the Yang realm. Along the way, the silver-haired little Lolita just happened to be rushing in the same direction as the Ying siblings. Hey, sure fan, I heard you're very fierce. Your junior brother used heavenly lightning to blast the disciple of the Yang realm, celestial sovereign, half to death. Are you even more powerful than him? I'm just as fierce. Chu Feng nodded with a smile. How strange. The silver-haired little Lolita was suspicious. Ingwudi directly spoke and said, "Brother, I feel like we're old friends at first sight. How about we travel together?" Was it true? Chu Feng was suspicious in his heart. He didn't know if Ingwudi's face would still darken after knowing his identity. Everyone quickly flee. There are vicious beasts everywhere. After they rushed into the depths of the prairie, groups of golden wolves appeared. They were all as tall as small mountains. One of them glared with golden eyes as he roared and charged over. Blood-curdling screams rang out as many people were bitten to death by the giant golden wolves. The scene was bloody because some of these wolves had reached the quasi-saint level. Chu Feng chopped off an enormous golden wolf's head with a single slash. This was a wolf king that had reached the saint level. It was originally going to pounce on the silver-haired little Lolita, but it was killed with a single slash. This shocked Ingwudi and Ing Xiao. This sure fan was indeed fierce enough. Of course, she didn't forget to thank him. Not far away, a few old servants who followed the Ying siblings wiped their cold sweat. They came from the banished immortal cave and were in charge of protecting the Ying siblings along the way. They didn't react in time, just now, and were a step too late to saving Xiao. Thank you. Judging from Dao Brothers' bearing, you really resemble an old friend. Ing Zhixin spoke in a very low voice. Chapter 996. Howl. Wolf howls rose and fell on the prairie like the deafening waves of the vast ocean. Moreover, they scattered the clouds in the sky with terrifying momentum. Golden lines could be seen interweaving on the prairie. Those were golden wolves, and some of them were at the quasi-saint and saint level. For a moment, battle cries shook the sky. The seed-level evolvers from every race actually had helpers in the dark. Allowing them to do this was a manifestation of the overall strength of the race. Of course, when it came to a showdown between the seed-level evolvers themselves, the helpers in the dark could only watch without lifting a finger during the struggle for supremacy. There were many tests to enter the Yang realm. There were tests to examine the race as a whole and battles to recognize individual strength. Howl! Dozens of golden wolves howled in one area. The golden fur on their bodies stood on end, and the fangs in their mouths were as white as sharp daggers. They looked terrifying as they opened their bloody mouths, and a fishy smell assailed the nostrils. These dozens of golden wolves joined forces, and there were no less than 10 at the quasi-saint level. Rays of light erupted from them as their respective golden runes linked together. They surged up and down like a flood. Wherever they passed, many evolvers screamed miserably as they were crushed and blasted apart by the golden rune flood. Even some quasi-saints suffered grievances as their physical bodies were torn apart. The golden wolf battle formation was a vicious beast battle technique from before the primordial era. Here, it multiplied the combat strength of these dozens of golden wolves and made them invincible. Ingwudi's expression changed. This group of golden wolves was charging at them, so they had no choice but to go all out. Even the elders in the dark appeared to help resist. In reality, danger appeared in other areas as well. There were wolves howling at the moon, swallowing and spitting out golden light as they went on a killing spree. Something unexpected happened. There was a saint-level golden wolf hiding in this battle formation. It borrowed the might of the vicious beast battle formation to increase its own combat prowess. After it suddenly manifested and erupted, it cut open the stomachs of the 2 saint-level guardians who were about to leave the banished immortal cave and swallowed their soul light. Oh my, so powerful! The silver-haired little Lolita's face was deathly pale as she hid behind an elder. Evil creature! The other elders from the banished immortal cave were all at the saint level. They immediately flew into a rage and resisted this group of golden wolves. Roar! Another sacred level golden wolf appeared. The 2 of them rose together, carrying with them a golden ocean of symbols. They condensed the killing intent and energy of several dozen vicious beasts as they rushed forward. Amidst the banging sounds, 3 of the banished immortal cave's saints were sent flying. They coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, and one of them even died under the wolf's claws. Even his soul light was scattered. The situation was critical. There were at least 2 saint wolves hidden among these golden wolves. They had set their sights on this side a long time ago because Chu Feng had killed a saint-ranked wolf king to saving Xiao Xiao. They were taking revenge on him. Roar! The pack of wolves roared, baring their fangs one after another. Their golden fur shone as they opened their bloody mouths. They were incomparably sinister, their eyes cold. Boom! Ying Zhixian made her move. 5-color divine light erupted and swept away a few golden wolves. She had already entered the realm of quasi-saints. Back then, when she was in the foreign realm with Chu Feng, her soul light was already close to this level. After returning for a year, she naturally advanced. Roar! The holy wolf roared and pounced towards her. Elder sister. The silver-haired little Lolita was worried. Even the Tao protector was shaken to the point of coughing up blood. The pack of wolves was too savage, especially since they had set their sights on this place. The number of holy wolves hidden here was worrying. Chu Feng stepped forward and walked over with large strides. He held a battle spear in one hand. He naturally didn't look on with folded arms. He didn't need to conceal himself too much. With the spear in one hand, he directly picked up a golden holy wolf and blasted it out. With a bang, that golden wolf exploded and a bloody mist surged. It forcefully opened up a gap in the golden rune flood and caused the ferocious beast battle formation's power to decline. At this moment, Evening Woody couldn't help but let out a strange cry. He really wanted to curse. This person was too abnormal. It was just a spear, yet he killed a holy wolf. This spear of mine has a slight, innate attribute. It's not far from being a rare treasure in the world. Chu Feng laughed. He had a rather modest look on his face as he claimed credit, but wasn't arrogant at all. The golden wolves roared angrily. The pack of ferocious beasts originally had their eyes on Chu Feng and came for revenge. Now, they were extremely furious and pounced forward to kill him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The wormwood parted and dozens of golden lines flickered. They were too fast as they attacked Chu Feng from all sides of the prairie. The golden rune flood slapped down and drowned that area. Chu Feng still held the spear in one hand as he fought the pack of wolves here. After that, the Ying siblings saw him kill these ferocious beasts with one spear strike after another. In the end, the few holy wolves were all pierced through and drenched in blood. Their soul light collapsed, and they all lost their lives. Only Chu Feng was safe and sound in the battlefield. He held the battle spear that was dripping with blood as he stood on the prairie. Ying Zhixian's white clothes were flawless. She was as fresh and clean as snow piled up on a flowering tree. Her immortal temperament was fully displayed. She was tall, and her silver hair was smooth and supple. It was so bright that it could be seen as a mirror. She had a celestial bearing and jade bones. Her appearance was truly exceptional. At this moment, there was actually a hint of reminiscence on her face as she sighed softly. Brother Surestyle is very similar to an old friend of mine. Every time this kind of juncture happens, he would always sweep through an army of 1,000 like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Unfortunately, I don't know if I can see him again. Huh? The silver-haired little Lolita was astonished. Her older sister had always been elegant and otherworldly. She was like a true fairy that had descended into the world of mortals. She rarely expressed her emotions, yet she actually said something like this today. Ying Wudi's face darkened slightly at the first instance. Chu Feng turned his head and took a glance at this former brother-in-law of his. He really wanted to say, I haven't even revealed my true body, yet you're already starting to have a dark expression? Sigh. I wonder how brother-in-law is doing. Bless him and keep him safe. When I evolve into the ultimate form in the Yang realm, I'll definitely go and receive him and help him vent his anger. Ying Xiaoxiao mumbled. Her long silver hair reached her waist, and there was a look of longing on her little face. Her large eyes were glowing like gems, but there was also a bit of sadness in them. It was rare that Ingwudi's slightly dark face also had a bit of regret as he recalled many things. This battle spear had a large amount of innate objects been added to it. An old man from the banished immortal cave walked over and interrupted their thoughts. The expressions of the old saints from the banished immortal cave changed. They were extremely shocked to see this young man kill a pack of wolves with a single spear strike. Yes, part of it was added. Chu Feng nodded. After that, he indicated everyone to look into the distance. There were even more abnormal ones, such as an old monk from the Amitabha temple. He was holding an alms bowl as though he wanted to swallow the sky. That alms bowl overflowed with auspicious multicolored light as it sucked in over 100 golden wolves. Among them, there were no less than 3 sacred wolves. They were smelted in that terrifying vessel, and a bloody mist drifted out. The few old men from the banished immortal cave sighed. They naturally knew that the alms bowl was a sacred treasure from the Amitabha temple. Unless an evolver at the Illumination realm took action, there was no other solution. In reality, the banished immortal cave had also brought a treasure of this level, but it wasn't here. Instead, they brought their own descendants from the dilapidated universe and advanced from another direction. These few people were in charge of looking after Ingwudi, Ing Zhexian, and the others who came from the Yang realm. They wanted to leave separately and not put all their eggs in one basket. Bloody mist lingered on the prairie. Many evolvers had died, and a large group of wolves had also perished. Who said the path into the Yang realm was very safe and that we could retreat even if we failed? This is the lie. Now, a large number of people have died. Someone shouted with a sobbing tone. In this battle, at least 8,000 evolvers had died. Bang! After a black-robed old man from the Origin demonic palace blasted out a black seal and turned a wolf king and his subordinates into minced meat, the battle in this region came to a complete end. How weak. So what if some people died? When we rose to power back then, which one of us didn't kill our way out a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood? A 6-winged god sneered. There were at least a dozen gods hovering in the air in this region. They witnessed everything, but no one interfered. The blue-haired god who was ranked 97 was accompanying the 8th god, Qi Ming. At this moment, the corner of his mouth curled up slightly and revealed a faint smile with a hint of mockery. He looked down on these evolvers in the dilapidated universe and shook his head there. Lu Feng, your disciple will also come. When he meets these people in a while, I reckon he can sweep them away with a single hand and crush the people of the same level in this universe. Beside the heaven-warping god Qi Ming, who was ranked 8th in the Yang realm, one of the 2 goddesses spoke with a smile. Her face was beautiful, gentle, and slightly charming. Your disciple will also come. We've all received news that this secret realm is strange. There's an ancient pool with dense Yin energy hidden there. It's filled with the aura of the source. It's the ideal place for the disciples of the Yang realm to intercept Yin energy and harmonize their own Yang fire. Lu Feng, who was ranked 97 in the God realm, said with a brilliant smile. Many people from the Yang realm would come. Not only would the disciples of the 2 female gods appear, even the 8th god, Qi Ming's disciple, would come. In addition, there would be even more disciples from the Yang realm. Even Lu Feng and the 8th god Qi Ming were attracted by that ancient pool. They rushed to this place to intercept the Yin realm's energy source. The so-called surging Yang energy might not necessarily be the best state. The powerhouses of the Yang realm had already deduced that if they could obtain the Yin realm's energy source's conditioning, it might make their path of evolution smoother. At the end of the prairie was a swamp with mist. Sparse, ancient trees grew there, and there was also a golden lake in the depths of the swamp. A golden lake. How many gods must have died to form this lake? The 8th god, Qi Ming, looked into the distance. When he saw the situation in the swamp, even he was moved. And in the middle of the golden lake, there was a black, ancient pool that was emitting wisps of mist. It was astonishingly cold. Woo! At this time, there was an evolver holding a snow-white conch. He blew a grand and oppressive sound as he hurried over from the horizon. It was a large ship that came from the Yang realm. As soon as it entered this secret realm, it crossed the prairie with surging yang energy and approached the swamp. Who do I see? The hero of the yang realm with the title of Little Deity. Yes, I also see a familiar face. I was fortunate enough to see that person once in the yang realm's vast sea city. He's known as one of the top 10 geniuses of the present age. Oh, the saintess who ranks 9th on the saint ranking has come. Heavens, I actually saw such a peerless genius. Many people from the yang realm who had descended into this secret realm earlier cried out in surprise. Even the silver-robed divine king was moved. Even Lu Maple and Qi Ming revealed strange expressions. Without a doubt, large ships appeared one after another. They all came for the ancient pool and wanted to intercept a strand of the source of the yang realm so that they could evolve better. This time, a group of extraordinary people came and suppressed all the evolvers. Many of them had the chance to contend for hegemony in the yang realm in the future and become powerful standard-bearers of the yang realm. Chu Feng watched calmly. Among them were some of his enemies and descendants that the celestial venerables had meticulously cultivated. He was slightly excited. I really want to make a move right now and slap them all to death. This was what he thought in his heart. He had an impulse to do something great and eliminate the inheritors of his enemies from the yang realm. He wanted to make those celestial venerables regret and turn ashen. If hundreds of geniuses from the yang realm all fell, it would definitely be a super major event. Moreover, it seemed like there were more large ships sailing over. Too many people had appeared. This was simply going to become a grand meeting of the yang realm's geniuses. Chapter 997. The swamp was very dark and filled with mist. There were some ancient trees that weren't close to each other and were sparsely scattered. There were fallen leaves in the puddles that emitted a rotten smell. Many people came to this place with abundant yin energy today. The people of the broken universe were somewhat unwilling and angry. Wasn't this their training field? The geniuses of the yang realm drove battleships one after another, forming a line and crossing the sky, ignoring everyone present. Some evolvers who were flying were even hit by the ships of the yang realm and disappeared instantly, leaving only a bloody mist behind. The gods were indifferent as they stood in midair with their hands behind their backs, watching everything quietly. Even these gods were afraid that the arrival of a group of geniuses would change the rules here. These were the true elite disciples of the yang realm. Some had the bloodline of the celestial venerables. Some were the crown princes of the dynasties. All of them were people with shocking talent. From the lesser saint to the saint, and then to the god realm, there were all kinds of geniuses of different ages and realms. Not long ago, an ancient pond was discovered in this swamp. It was a little strange and was sent back to the yang realm. What it emitted was the source of yin energy that was divided into many levels and could be absorbed and smelted by yang realm evolvers of different realms. Brother Blue, someone shouted in surprise. The person who rose from the ship was naturally a god, an extremely high-ranked one at that. Otherwise, why would he greet Blue Maple, who was ranked 97th among the gods? The yang realm was vast and majestic, not to mention the 97th among the gods. Even the 970th ranked was a terrifying evolver whose name shook the world. Everyone was willing to rope in such a person. Now that someone at the same level as Blue Maple had arrived, it naturally caused a commotion. A new god glanced at Blue Maple. He was very arrogant and didn't take it to heart. He even had a mocking smile. This made it even more clear that he wasn't afraid of Blue Maple. His status was even more terrifying. However, when that person recognized Qi Ming, who was beside Blue Maple, his smile disappeared and his expression became serious. There were many more gods in the surroundings. They each guarded a corner and waited for the source of yin energy in the depths of the swamp to appear. Although the depths of the swamp were dark, those golden lakes also had a sparkling luster, appearing very holy and extraordinary. However, as soon as they approached, everyone felt a bone-piercing coldness. It was exceptionally cold, as if their souls were going to be frozen solid here. Divinity substance. How many gods must have died in the past to form such a group of lakes? An evolver from the Yang realm gasped in surprise. Unfortunately, it has been contaminated. This type of divine substance is extremely poisonous to the soul. We cannot absorb it. A deity sighed with regret. Now, the gods that had just arrived from the Yang realm had all flown up from the large ship and appeared high up in the sky. They stood in the distance and didn't approach that black pool. The geniuses from the Yang realm, who were at the quasi-saint and saint level, were approaching and driving large ships to arrive at the scene. Even though this group of geniuses from the Yang realm were slightly younger, they were still stronger than the people from the broken universe. However, this group of geniuses from the Yang realm, whose evolutionary levels were comparatively lower, weren't the least bit afraid of those god-ranked geniuses from the Yang realm who relied on their status. Each and every one of them was elegant and confident, because they believed that it wouldn't be long before they would surpass those gods. Amongst them, although some were at the saint level, they had long since been recognized as having the potential to become an Empyrean. They were destined to advance by leaps and bounds and overcome all difficulties. It was even to the extent that some of these second saints and saints merely took such terrifying existences like Blue Maple and Chi Ming indifferently. This was because some of them were at the top of the Yang realm's saint ranking. There was no lack of people in the top 10, such as the possessors of the Overlord bloodline, the War Immortal physique, and the Primordial Violet Mist. Their innate talents were world-shaking. Their goal was to surpass their predecessors. In their eyes, Chi Ming, Lu Feng, and the others were merely a step ahead. They would challenge them sooner or later. Some of these people were called Little Empyreans, while others were called Princess. All of them wore indifferent, calm, and peaceful expressions. Those with terrifying innate talents were confident that their potential was unparalleled. Their hearts didn't allow themselves to lower their heads. Even when facing legendary figures like Chi Ming and the others, they merely viewed them as equals. Chu Feng saw through the trick. These quasi-saints and saints were actually unafraid of the fierce god-ranked people. Each and every one of them held their heads high and looked around spiritedly. Their elegance was like divine jade. These people were bold and had some confidence. At this time, the evolvers from the dilapidated universe approached the group of golden lakes, including the evolvers from the Yin world, Ingwudi, Jinlin, Grandmaster Ba Jie, and Jiang Luoshin. The geniuses from the Yang world had arrived earlier than them. They had all ridden terrifying warships and rushed over. Now, they had already landed on the ground and were standing beside the sparkling lakes. Some saw the approaching evolvers from the dilapidated universe. Some were indifferent and didn't express anything. There were also some with the corners of their lips curled up in disdain. Oh, I advise everyone not to get too close. There might be a battle here in a while. Try to avoid accidental injuries and hide as far away as possible, a woman in purple said calmly. A purple-robed woman calmly said. She was 175 centimeters tall and had a slender body with beautiful lines. Her words seemed polite, but there was a sense of indifference and alienation. It was a kind of pride that came from her bones. Not allowing the evolvers from the dilapidated universe to approach was a form of rejection. Not allowing them to set foot on the land of fortune was also a tactful warning. She was indeed very beautiful. Her beautiful pupils were purple and lustrous. Her red lips were bright, and her pearly white teeth were like jade. Her looks were exceptionally outstanding. The people of the Yang world called her Xiao Ziyun. Everyone please. Xiao Ziyun's voice wasn't loud and was very pleasant to the ears. However, this kind of bright and beautiful self-confident style clearly carried a feeling of looking down on others. Her figure was slender and graceful. She was taller than some male evolvers. Her long purple sparkling hair was soft and lustrous. She was exuberant with a youthful aura. Her elegance was rare, and her temperament was exceptionally outstanding. The attitude of the geniuses from the Yang world towards her wasn't ordinary. It could be vaguely seen that she was extraordinarily talented and had a lot of authority. Because many people were listening attentively, the clamor had disappeared. Fairy Xiao possesses excellent self-restraint and is unwilling to speak too harshly. If it was me, then I would surely not speak in this way. A white-clothed scholar had a warm smile on his face as he nodded to Xiao Ziyun, and he was extremely courteous, because everyone knew that Xiao Ziyun had the title of princess. There was a phenomenon when she was born, and her talent was extraordinary. In the end, she was continuously baptized by her sect with phoenix blood and nurtured with all their resources. She possessed the aptitude of 3 phoenixes. She alone could match the potential of 3 true phoenixes. How terrifying was this? Her talent was world-shocking. At the same time, this also proved how terrifying the orthodoxies of the Yang world were. They could use the blood of true phoenixes to nurture their disciples and forcefully raise them to the aptitude of 3 phoenixes. It was world-shocking. What would you say if it was you? The brows of a genius from the Yang world raised slightly, and his smile was very thick. Of course we'll directly expel them. What's the point of saying more? Just drive them away. Those who don't comply will be killed. The white-clothed scholar looked refined, but he was actually going to start a massacre amidst his laughter. White-clothed Chinhan. As expected, you've always been refined yet powerful. Ha. Someone had a faint smile on his face. In the distance, the expressions of the people from the dilapidated cosmos were unsightly. The people from the Yang world had no misgivings. They were commenting and laughing just like that, ignoring them. This was because they all had confidence. They were all giants in the future and would contend for hegemony in the Yang world one day. They would take over the scepter from the hands of the celestial venerables and even become almighty figures that shook the ancients and dazzled the present. They would look down on the ages. At this time, someone was preparing to take action. He drove away the evolvers from the dilapidated cosmos and didn't let them approach this place. He was very crude and didn't give them any face. This isn't very good. We should subdue them with virtue. In fact, it's very simple. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey, and the others will naturally disperse. There's no need to kill. Another person spoke with a faint smile on his face. This was a golden-robed youth with a head full of long golden hair. His entire body shone like a blooming sun. It was as if the sun had transformed into a god. Jin Chuantung. Someone recognized him. He was the direct descendant of the Gold family. His blood was golden in color, and a single drop could regenerate flesh and bones. His talent was terrifying and world-shaking. It was reported that those who possessed this kind of golden blood would have a sturdy body. They were known as precious weapons that were invincible. He smiled faintly and indicated for the person beside him to speak and carry out his intentions. The genius beside him had clearly become his loyal follower. His name was Ling Chun, and he could also be considered his bodyguard. At this time, he had a cold expression on his face and disdain at the corner of his mouth. He berated with a voice that was neither loud nor soft. Which genius in the dilapidated cosmos is famous and can be considered the strongest? Ling Chen asked. This kind of question carried malice and definitely wasn't a good thing. There's no need to look. I heard that there's a person called Yi Hao who isn't bad. He once made my Yang realms Hong Xian and Fei Ling unexpectedly suffer a small loss. That's him, right? Jin Chuaning spoke. His golden blood made his body shine as if he was cast from gold. In the distance, Hong Xian and Fei Ling's expressions weren't very good as they stared over. Jin Chuaning's follower, Ling Chun, had white hair like a waterfall and a robust body. Back then, she was known as the Blade King, but she was subdued by him. Now, she was very loyal to him. Yi Hao, come over. However, it was impossible for Yi Hao to come over. Later on, someone mentioned Yi Hao's senior brother, Shi Fan. Chu Feng was in the distance and was currently talking to Ing Xiao Xiao. Sai, my brother-in-law is so lonely and miserable. He's alone in the Yin realm cosmos. If he comes here, I think he'll definitely teach those geniuses of the Yang realm a ruthless lesson. The silver-haired little Lolita was extremely angry. Ing Wudi said softly, "Don't be silly. He can't beat these people. If he really appears, he'll be killed by the deities under the celestial venerable. It's best if he doesn't appear." You come over. The Blade King Ling Chun pointed at Chu Feng, telling him to come over. Chu Feng cast a sidelong glance. This was truly an undeserved calamity. Everyone else, stay a bit further away. Without our permission, none of you are allowed to step foot here. The Blade King Ling Chun spoke. Jin Chuanting, who had golden blood in his body, also nodded. Originally, this was a testing ground for many evolvers in the dilapidated cosmos. Those who passed could enter the Yang realm. But following the arrival of this batch of geniuses, the rules were rewritten. The people of the dilapidated cosmos were indignant. They were looked down upon like this and felt humiliated. Fan, please, come over here. The Blade King Ling Chun had a smile on his face as he invited Chu Feng over. Fan, you're just going over. Don't be impulsive. The dark-faced Ing Wudi said softly. Hurry up and leave. Don't provoke them. You're not their opponent. Ing Zhixian also transmitted her voice. Her bright eyes were kind, and her breath was like orchids. They're bullying people too much. Ing Xiaoxiao was very angry and extremely indignant. The Blade King raised his brows, indicating for Chu Feng to go over and not cower. What level of evolver are you? Chu Feng opened his mouth and inquired. Quasi-Sage. The Blade King spoke. As expected, his face was still slightly inexperienced. He wasn't very old and had naturally white hair. His temperament was swift and fierce like an unsheathed divine sword. Isn't your level a bit too low? Chu Feng despised him. Everyone was immediately speechless. He was actually despising him. In reality, there were many quasi-sages and saints among this group of people from the Yang realm. What they valued was potential. They had great origins and astonishing backgrounds, so they weren't afraid of those god-level geniuses. Was he being despised? The Blade King Ling Chen's white hair danced in the wind, and his pupils immediately became incomparably terrifying. He had only been defeated by one person in his life, and that was Jin Chuaning. He was very convinced. He had defeated countless experts in the Yang realm and was known as the Blade King. He was a tyrant among those who used the blade. But now, he was being despised by the people of the Yang realm. They didn't even put him in their eyes. It was truly unbearable. I'm a saint. Chu Feng arrogantly despised him once again and attacked him a second time. The Blade King almost spat out blood as he held back his anger. He didn't know how much saint origin energy he had in his body. Through special cultivation, he could kill a saint at the quasi-sage realm. Thus, he was incomparably cold as he stared at Chu Feng. Finally, he signaled him to go over. What do you mean? Chu Feng asked. Use your laughable saint-level ability to attack me. I'll stand here and let you make the first move. The Blade King Ling Chun said arrogantly. Did you say that? Chu Feng asked with a smile. Indeed. The Blade King was calm and cold. Yes. Chu Feng nodded. Then he slowly lifted his leg and aimed at the Blade King Ling Chen's face. The next moment, he was even faster than lightning as he lifted his leg and directly kicked. He gave him face to kick, so why wouldn't he? He was a divine general. Naturally, he would be able to kick someone with just a little bit of skill. Even if the other party had grasped the essence of the Blade Dao and had reached an extreme sublimation, could fight against tens of thousands of enemies, could evade flowing light, and had divine methods, he was still destined to be in trouble when he encountered him. Bang! As expected, this kick landed heavily on the Blade King Ling Chen's face. Chapter 998. Ling Chun was in a terrible mood. He had let the Yin realm native attack first, but in the end, the other party was impolite and ferocious, knocking him down with a single kick. Moreover, the kick landed squarely on his face. He coughed up blood and flew backward, screaming miserably as he fell to the ground. This was simply making him feel like he was being F***ed. This was too F***king embarrassing. He was practically begging for someone to kick his face. Only then did he feel the pain. His entire face was deformed, and his cheekbones, nose, and jaw were all shattered. Snot and tears flowed, and blood flew out from his nose and mouth. Ayo! Everyone heard him let out a mournful cry. It didn't sound like the cry of a human, but rather like that of a wounded beast. It was rather horrifying. Everyone was dumbstruck. Needless to say, the geniuses of the Yang realm didn't expect that Ling Chun would be sent flying with a single kick. This scene felt a little unreal. The people in the dilapidated universe were also petrified. Yi Hao's senior brother was truly ferocious. As expected, they were of the same bloodline. These two brothers had never suffered a loss even when encountering the geniuses of the Yang realm. The silver-haired Lolita was speechless. This Fan was too straightforward, kicking that person's face just like that. It was truly satisfying. Jiang Luoshun, Jin Lin, Ing Wudi, Ing Zhixian, Yuan, and the others were also speechless. This scene was truly bizarre. Xiao Ziyun, the white-robed scholar Chen Han, and the others were all stupefied and had nothing to say. Jin Chuaning's face twitched in dissatisfaction. Ling Chun was someone he had personally subdued and was the #1 general under him. In the end, he was sent flying with a single kick. Ling Chen's face was covered in blood. He roared and really wanted to tear that Fan apart. It was too humiliating. Chu Feng said, "Stop shouting. You're a realm lower than me after all, so it's reasonable for you to take a kick from me." Ouch! Ling Chun was almost angered to death. Normally speaking, he could subdue his superiors in the Yang realm and kill saints. There were many saints' sources hidden in his flesh. Chu Feng said again, "Sorry, this kick was a bit heavy. However, you were the one who asked me to kick you." This was a second round of injury. Ling Chen couldn't take it and wanted to stomp his feet. Ling Chen really wanted to correct him. She only said to let the other party attack first. So why did the other party say it now? "Kill him," Jin Chuaning said. "Buzz." Ling Chen also felt humiliated. His physique glowed and resonated with the void. The flesh on his face was reconstructed and his bones were reconstructed. In an instant, he had recovered. He held a long saber in his hand, and his title of Saber King naturally came from his proficiency in the field of Saber Dao. The gloomy swamp was instantly enveloped by a cold light. The Saber Sovereign was enraged. "Wait a moment. You were the one who asked me to kick you." Chu Feng mentioned this again. This was simply 3 times the damage. Then, he quickly said, "Is it because you feel that you are weak and want to fight me with your life, so you don't dare to let me make the first move?" When he said these words, he revealed a look of disdain. Ling Chun was fuming in her heart. This is really not treating a bean bun as dry rations. This is too despicable and despicable. Since when can the natives of the netherworld look down on the geniuses of the mortal world? They had estimated that the geniuses of the mortal world would be able to intimidate their peers in the netherworld, and it was impossible for them to meet any opponents. But now, he was being looked down upon again and again. This was intolerable. "I will still let you make the first move. Come." The Saber King Ling Chun was truly enraged. In a fit of anger, he shouted in a cold voice. "All right." Chu Feng agreed without any hesitation. Ling Chun was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. The other party actually dared to agree, and he even had an excited look on his face. That attitude was as if he wanted to take advantage of the situation and pinch a soft persimmon. This time he was prepared. He raised his saber and was ready to kill his opponent at any time. He would not give his opponent any more chances. "Coming," Chu Feng shouted. Then he decisively stomped his foot again. With a flying kick, he hit his target once more. The sole of his shoe made contact with his opponent's face. The Saber King Ling Chen's face was deformed. Under the impact and pressure of this kick, his face blossomed and his bones were broken. His whole body was lying on his back, spurting out blood as he flew backward and crashed into the swamp. In the wilderness, everyone was dumbfounded. He was kicked in the face again. At this moment, the Saber King Ling Chun was stunned. He had forgotten about the pain and was starting to doubt his life. He held the saber in his hand and was ready to slash out at any time. But in the end, he was still hit. He did not manage to hit the sole of his opponent's foot and was kicked in the face again. "Ah!" He screamed miserably. He really could not take it anymore. He rolled out of the swamp and slashed at Chu Feng with a resplendent saber light. He was already furious. "You're not particular," Chu Feng shouted. The Saber King Ling Chun wanted to spit out a mouthful of profanity after hearing this. He had been stepped on and was even said to be not particular. Boom! The saber slashed out, splitting the void and causing the swamp to boil. This was a historical remnant. There were law fragments and order runes under the swamp. Otherwise, this place would have been destroyed and would no longer exist. Swoosh! Chu Feng shifted his body sideways and dodged to the side. His fist enlarged and smashed into the other party's face with an inconceivable speed. That was because he was a divine king. Even if he suppressed his realm and only displayed the power of a saint, it was still not something the Saber King Ling Chan could dodge. Not long ago, Chu Feng had transcended the tribulation and became a mid-stage divine king, evolver. He had improved himself in all aspects and was truly extraordinary. Bang, bang, bang. The Saber King Ling Chan was punched continuously. The bones in his body were exploding and turning into bone dregs. This was the result of Chu Feng's deliberate suppression. Otherwise, he would have been crushed to death with a single finger. A divine king suppressing a quasi-saint was simply not a battle of the same order of magnitude. Many people were moved, including the geniuses from the Yang realm. They had come here with arrogance, yet they were actually being humiliated like this? This was a little unimaginable. Bang! When Chu Feng blasted out another punch, all the bones in the Saber King Ling Chen's body were shattered. His entire body went limp, and his face was full of shock and unwillingness. He was really starting to doubt his life. Even the top geniuses of the Yin realm would have flaws in the order they comprehended while cultivating in this broken universe. How could they actually suppress him? He had a dumbfounded expression and his heart was full of pain. Chu Feng said in an unrestrained manner, "Do you know what fist technique this is? It's the flowing light lightning fist, known as the #1 fist technique in the universe. You want to compete in speed with me? Your saber is inferior to my fist." He said in a lecturing tone, "You're just a quasi-saint. Compared to a saint like me, you're naturally far inferior. It's only natural for you to lose." The Saber King Ling Chun felt a sharp pain in his heart. He could kill saints in the Yang realm and fight those of a higher realm, yet he was being lectured in the Yin realm. How could he endure this? Jin Chuaning couldn't stand it anymore. How could he tolerate a native of the Yin realm pretending to be a big shot when he was stepping on the injured body of his #1 subordinate? He was just about to speak when Chu Feng glanced at him and revealed a disdainful expression. "Don't tell me you're also a quasi-saint? Stay at the side. You're not my match." The group of geniuses from the Yang realm, they were all rather astonished. Instead, they were being looked down upon and looked down upon. This wasn't the right scene. "I've already become a saint half a year ago." Jin Chuaning looked at him coldly. He really wanted to say, "You can't even see through my evolution level, yet you dare to boast shamelessly? You just become a saint half a year ago. What can you achieve?" Chu Feng's attitude and tone were completely condescending. The golden blood in Jin Chuanting's body surged, and it was as if his entire body was cast in gold. He had a sullen expression and exuded might without being angry. The void was resonating, and the flower of order bloomed in this place. It was abnormally gorgeous. "Many of you are quasi-saints. You're a little weak." Chu Feng mocked the group, targeting all the geniuses from the Yang realm. The white-robed scholar Chen Han revealed a faint smile. He was just about to speak, but in the end, Chu Feng stared at him first and said, "What are you laughing at? I can fight 10 of you alone." Chen Han's refined smile immediately froze. "Oh, this purple-robed beauty's cultivation isn't bad. Just now, someone said you have the potential of the 3 phoenixes, but I can fight 3 of you by myself." Everyone was speechless. Was he trying to brag and say he had the power of the 9 phoenixes? Xiao Ziyun's charm was rarely seen in this world. She was 175 centimeters tall, slender, and elegant. Her figure had astonishing curves, and her face was flawless. She was so beautiful that it was like a fantasy. Now, her lustrous purple eyes were staring at Chu Feng. He actually dared to provoke her like this? "Everyone, behave yourselves and go cultivate properly. Don't be arrogant. You must know that there's always someone better out there in the world." Chu Feng turned around and left after he finished speaking. "You still want to leave? Just stand here." The white-robed scholar Chen Han shouted. Jin Chuanting even coldly blocked the way. He didn't say a word and was about to kill. The other geniuses also revealed cold expressions with mocking expressions, provoking the people of the Yang realm like this. And he still wanted to have a good ending? "What? You still want to fight with me?" Chu Feng raised his head, not worried at all, and continued to walk out. The white-robed scholar Chen Han mocked. "Killing the chicken to warn the monkeys? You are that chicken, and you still want to leave alive? How laughable! Leave your life behind." Jin Chuanting seemed to be pronouncing his sentence, and his voice was very cold. "Who else wants to fight with me? All of you stand out. I, Sure Fan, will fight all of you by myself." Chu Feng shouted loudly. "End the battle quickly." At this moment, even Xiao Ziyun couldn't hold back anymore. She let the white-robed scholar Chen Han make a move. What was the point of keeping this person alive? Just kill him. "Is there anyone else who wants to fight with me? Who dares to make a move against me?" Chu Feng shouted. This was a real provocation, looking down on a group of geniuses from the Yang realm. Of course, a group of people responded. "Me? He's just the Ean's spirit. Kill him. What's the point of keeping him alive? Kill him." The group of people sneered. They were all young, super-evolved beings from the Yang realm, and they didn't hide their desire to kill Chu Feng. Even Xiao Ziyun's gaze was cold as she stared at Chu Feng. Come. I, sure, will fight 300 rounds with all of you. Come at me together." Chu Feng challenged. "Kill him." Some people's expressions were cold. In an instant, many people pressed forward. At first, they didn't want to join hands and felt that one person was enough, but now many people were moving. "Since that's the case, everyone, enjoy yourself," Chu Feng said softly. He grabbed 2 handfuls of violet heavenly thunder amethyst and threw them out before he spoke. "Violet heavenly thunder amethyst? Saint grade? No, I'm at the illuminator level." Someone cursed angrily, wanting to swallow Chu Feng alive. A terrifying event of annihilation was about to happen in this area. Violet heavenly thunder amethyst rained down here and then exploded. If not for the marshland being special and containing supreme symbols, this area would have been destroyed. Immediately, miserable cries rang out everywhere. Not to mention the others. Even Xiao Ziyun, Chen Han, and Jin Chuanting wanted nothing more than to disappear from this place. In the end, they were drowned out by the lightning. "I'm going to hashtag Yen." Someone cursed. He was about to be finished. In the distance, Hong Xian, failing, and the others' faces twitched. Looking at this situation, looking at the violet heavenly thunder amethyst, they really didn't want to think about it. They felt that Yi Hao's senior brother was too shameless. As expected, the two of them were of the same bloodline. Clearly, Xiao Zun, Jin Chuanting, Chen Han, and the other geniuses from the Yang realm were all hit. Something big was about to happen. Chapter 999. Was he invincible just like that? The group of geniuses wanted to curse out loud. What did he mean by being invincible? This shameless underworld race actually attacked indiscriminately, despicable and hateful. The group of people was hit. The so-called war immortal physique, overlord bloodline, grand mist purple mist, and so on were all thrown into the swamp without any suspense. Some of the other geniuses had their life-saving treasures shattered, making them tremble in pain. Some even used the life substitution talisman to save their lives. The group of people was covered in dust. The ones with the lightest injuries were covered in blood with over a dozen broken bones. Large areas of their bodies were char-black. Those with heavy injuries disintegrated several times and survived with great difficulty. This naturally included the Saber King Ling Chun. His body was in tatters, and without the life substitution talisman, he would have died for sure. Jin Chuanting and Chen Han's faces were ashen. Their auras and elegance were all gone. Their so-called golden bodies and holy white clothes were now like charcoal, and their long hair was like withered grass. Even the peerless Xiao Ziyun was covering her face with her slender but pitch-black hands. She really couldn't face anyone. Many female geniuses in this area were screaming. They cared a lot about their image. What had they become now? It was as if they had rolled in a coal mine. Fairy Xiao, you've also been blasted. Your face is a little black. Chun Han, who was originally dressed in white, was in a daze from the explosion. His body was covered in blood, his bones were broken, and his life-saving mirror had turned into powder. His mind was still buzzing, and he was still in a daze. Hence, when he saw Xiao Ziyun, he subconsciously greeted her out of concern. In the end, Xiao Ziyun turned her head in anger and didn't want to pay attention to him. At this moment, she really wanted to kill someone. Fairy Xiao, your back is charred. On the other side, Jin Chuaning spoke. He shook his head violently, wanted to wake himself up, but the offending words had already been said. Xiao Ziyun turned around in anger. She really wanted to silence him. Her treasured battle dress was in tatters. How could her snow-white back not be charred? Where do you think you're going? There were a few people like Xiao Ziyun who had completely recovered. They wanted to rush over and kill Chu Feng, who was showing off at the side. This Yin realm creature was too hateful, releasing Yin lightning to harm them, and he even dared to boast shamelessly, shouting that he was already unmatched under the heavens, that he couldn't be forgiven. Catch! Chu Feng shouted. With a shake of his hand, he summoned 2 violet lightning crystals and threw them at the attackers. Escape! The group of people shouted and turned to run. Boom! The 2 people who pounced forward let out blood-curdling screams as they were knocked over once again. Their entire bodies were covered in blood, and their corporeal bodies had disintegrated. Their soul light had also been extinguished. Fortunately, they were protected by precious treasures. This cold pond is of no use to me. I'm too lazy to fight with you. One should be magnanimous. Don't shout and kill at the slightest provocation. Chu Feng shouted from afar. He then added, harmony is the most important thing. The group of geniuses in the Yang realm all wanted to bury him in their spittle and use the soles of their feet to trample him to death. He had already blown people up to this state, yet he still advised others not to shout about fighting and killing. He even said that all things should be done in peace. This was truly shameless and black-hearted to a certain extent. Even Xiao Ziyun, who possessed the power of the 3 phoenixes, was trembling and wanted to kill him. Boom! However, at this moment, the coal pond was spewing out black mist. The nearby golden lake was also churning and suffusing with terrifying divine energy. Chu Feng shouted, everyone, the mountains will never change, and the rivers will always flow. We will meet again in the Yang realm in the future and gather again to reminisce about today's fate. He decisively ran away. Indeed, the so-called Yin realm's origin energy in the cold pond was of no use to him. He had grown up in the Yin realm and didn't need to replenish it. On the contrary, he needed the Yang realm's origin energy. Many geniuses were at a loss. The time to fight for the fortune had arrived, but they were truly unwilling to watch helplessly as his silhouette disappeared into the distance. We'll deal with him later, someone said coldly. Since Shi Fan wanted to enter the Yang realm, there would be plenty of opportunities to deal with him in the future. The most important thing now was to seize the Yin realm's origin energy. Everyone, what are you waiting for? Let's go and enter the Yang realm to acknowledge a master. Chu Feng shouted at the numerous evolvers in the dilapidated universe. Everyone gazed at the cold pond and didn't know if there were other treasures inside. However, they all sighed softly because they indeed couldn't compete. Not everyone could be like Shi Fan and directly overturn a group of geniuses from the Yang realm. This secret realm was very large and extremely vast, but the route had already been determined. After passing through the swamp, there was an ancient forest with mountain peaks standing side by side. Ape cries and tiger roars could be heard as all kinds of increasingly terrifying dangers arrived. The scene was drenched in blood. There were people who died miserably after being impaled by a scorpion the size of an ox that scuttled out from the shrubs with its faint blue tail. Buzz, buzz. The sound of flapping wings rang out. The sky was densely packed with silver centipedes, as they pounced over. In addition, spiders the size of houses directly dropped down from some of the mountain peaks. They brought along huge webs and covered some evolvers, causing blood to flow like rivers. Chu Feng didn't act out of line. He only secretly protected a few acquaintances and led the large group forward. Sure, Fan, you're really amazing. You're practically a match for my brother-in-law back then. The silver-haired little Lolita's large eyes blinked as she had a very admiring look on her face. Naturally, there was also some regret in the depths of her large eyes when she mentioned Chu Feng. It was accompanied by worry. Would they meet again in this lifetime? Ying Zhixian also let out a soft sigh. She had a gentle expression on her face, and when she looked at Chu Feng, she was also very gentle. This made Chu Feng a little astonished. This banished fairy, who never revealed her feelings and was always faintly discernible and otherworldly, was actually a little emotional today. Don't speak nonsense. It won't do even if Chu Feng comes. He's simply not a match for that group of people from the Yang realm. He'll die miserably. Ying Wudi lectured his younger sister, Ying Xiao. TSK, what do you know? My brother-in-law has never been weaker than anyone in his entire life. How could he lose? The silver-haired little Lolita placed one hand on her slender waist. Her long silvery hair swayed as she rolled her eyes at her brother. Am I your brother by blood? Or is Chu Feng your brother by blood? Ying Wudi was indignant. Oh, but he's my brother-in-law by blood. The silver-haired little Lolita curled her lips and cast a sidelong glance at him. Gee, a silver-colored spider plant had taken root on a mountaintop. Now, its branches and tendrils unfurled and transformed into silver spears that pierced toward them. In a split second, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. This plant was too terrifying and could easily pierce through a quasi-saint to death. The ground was riddled with thousands of holes and turned into wasteland with surging magma. Order runes flickered in the secret realm and suppressed this region. We're simply not a match for an existence at the peak of the saint realm. Someone drew in a cold breath. Chu Feng saw the people from the Buddhist race, carrying the purple gold alms bowl as they charged through the mountainous region in the distance. The people from the Dao race also passed, and this spider plant just happened to obstruct Chu Feng and the others. You dare to obstruct us? Kill. Chu Feng didn't mind displaying his might. This time, he didn't use the heavenly thunder amethyst. He slashed over with his sword and turned this spider plant into fine powder. At this moment, Ying Wudi, Ying Xiao, and Ying Zhixian revealed astonished expressions. If they didn't have Sure Fan by their side, they would certainly have to pay a huge price if they wanted to pass. So much so that they might not be able to pass successfully. That was because the direct descendant of the banished immortal cave was in another direction with a treasure and wasn't with them. The Dao protectors beside the three siblings from the Ying family might not be able to protect them. Your grace is akin to giving you a new lease on life. Thank you. Ying Wudi said gratefully because Chu Feng's sword was decisive and sharp along the way. Many dangerous obstacles were easily resolved by him. At this moment, a few snow-white little animals flashed past in the distance. Chu Feng's heart stirred. Those were the 12 snow-white little creatures he brought out from the primal chaos. They were all at the God realm. Earlier, he had sent them out to scout for all kinds of information. Now, he received feedback that there was something strange about the exit ahead. There was a hanging mirror that could reflect the original bodies of all evolvers. He was afraid that someone would change their appearance and sneak into the world of the living. Chu Feng looked up at the sky and let out a long sigh. Was he destined to be unable to pass? In the end, he secretly took action and protected many people as they advanced. They passed through many difficulties and obstacles, such as killing a golden rock that was close to the Illuminator realm along the way. The road ahead was in sight. He brought many people to the exit in front of the secret realm. A passage surging with yang qi extended into the primal chaos and arrived in front of a door. After passing through was the world of the living. Chu Feng frowned when he saw the mirror hanging above the door. It was suffused with mist and law fragments. It was extremely divine and powerful. Some people called it the demon-revealing mirror, while others called it the divine-revealing mirror. It could make all disguises ineffective and automatically reveal one's true form, including one's strength. Chu Feng reckoned whether he could cut this mirror in one slash and rush into the world of the living. However, he hesitated in the end and stopped his restlessness. That was because he felt a terrifying pressure through the door. There was an extremely terrifying existence overseeing the Yang realm's boundary. What should he do at the crossroads of life, and a very important point of choice? If he forced his way through, it would be another world with vast seas and skies. Of course, failure would mean a tragic death. Otherwise, he would retreat and return to the universe of the underworld. Thank you for taking care of us along the way. Ying Zhixian suddenly spoke. She looked at Chu Feng with a gentle expression and a smile, but there was some regret and emptiness in the depths of her eyes. Chu Feng was startled. Why was that? Why did he feel that even though Ying Zhixian was very polite, there was a sense of alienation? In a split second, his heart trembled. You can't beat an evolver from the Yang realm, Ying Zhixian sighed, and said to Chu Feng softly with a disappointed and frustrated look in her beautiful eyes. This wasn't right. Chu Feng frowned and stared at her. Ying Zhixian also looked at him and said, There's a demon-revealing mirror here that can see through all falsehoods. If nothing unexpected happens, there should also be a mirror like this placed to the place where we came in. Moreover, there should be a divine being guarding it to block off the path of retreat. Everything will be restored. What are you trying to say? Chu Feng's voice was cold. Elder sister. The silver-haired little Lolita seemed to have recognized Chu Feng as well. She looked at her elder sister with incomparable nervousness and called out in a trembling voice. She was actually a little afraid. Ingwoody was also shocked. Could it be that the person in front of him was Chu Feng? Now that he heard the two sisters' words, he also guessed the situation. The silver-haired little Lolita looked at Chu Feng excitedly. She was very happy and couldn't control her emotions. But when she looked at her elder sister, she revealed a fearful expression and said with a trembling voice, No. Chapter 1000. Chu Feng only spoke a single sentence here. His voice wasn't loud, but it was like a clap of thunder, leaving everyone in the vicinity shaken. They all turned around, feeling that this was inconceivable. They were shocked and trembling as they stared at this place. The silver-haired little Loli's face was full of fear. Her sister had finally shouted out those words. Big sister, don't scare me. This kind of joke isn't funny at all. She tried to make her voice as calm as possible, and her expression returned to normal. However, she saw Ying Zhixian's determination as well as her calmness and indifference. Elder sister, the silver-haired little Lolita transmitted her voiceover. She inwardly dissuaded Ying Zhixian and wanted to stop her from changing her mind. However, Ying Xiaoxiao also knew that her older sister had always had her own views. Normally, she looked elegant, otherworldly, and ethereal like an immortal, but once she made a decision, it was very hard to change it. Furthermore, she knew that Ying Zhixian was an extremely rational person. It could be said that sometimes Ying Zhixian's rationality made people feel that she was too callous. In other words, she did not eat the food of the mortal world. She was clear and otherworldly, and somewhat heartless. Her indifference was sometimes very cold. At the same time, Ying Xiaoxiao was deeply aware of her older sister's methods. She had once made some of the clan's longtime elders who took advantage of their seniority bow their heads in a calm and easy manner. Ying Xiaoxiao knew that her elder sister's methods were formidable, and she absolutely wouldn't be vague when it was time to criticize others. It was very difficult for outsiders to imagine the other side of this banished fairy with exceptional looks. Ying Zhixian's emotions didn't fluctuate in the slightest. She was very calm and didn't look at her own younger sister. Instead, she stared at Chu Feng with a sense of alienation in her cold demeanor. Sister, the silver-haired little Loli was so anxious that she was about to cry. She secretly communicated with her, quickly transmitting sound to tell her a few things. She wanted to persuade her older sister not to do this. You don't understand, Ing Zhixian said coldly. Why don't I understand? I know you're rational, calm, and far-sighted. But I beg you once. Don't be too rational. Don't be too utilitarian. Pretend that you didn't see anything. Why did you shout out that Chu Feng was here? When you guys were on the other side, things were really good. The silver-haired little lowly was secretly arguing with her sister. Her emotions were very agitated, and she was somewhat out of control. She knew that even if her sister was willing to cooperate and cover up and explain this matter, it would be difficult to hide it from the people present. Beside him, Ing Wudi was petrified and his face was stiff. Was it really Chu Feng? The others also looked over, staring at this place. The news had already been leaked, and it was difficult to salvage the situation. Chu Feng looked at Ing Zhixian. The mountains and rivers were picturesque, and the beauties were like flowers. Ing Zhixian was really very beautiful. She was ethereal like a fairy and appeared elegant and exceptional amidst her coldness. She transcended the mortal world. Her figure was slender and had a golden ratio. She was slim and elegant. Her silver hair danced in the wind, and her beautiful eyes were full of spirit. Her nose was straight, and she had red lips and pearly white teeth. She really was like a fairy. Chu Feng had always known that her ability to control herself was superb. She was calm and decisive, and even surpassed Ing Wudi, the nominal inheritor of the Ing family. She was rational and reserved and extremely remarkable. Chu Feng had already felt it when he was in the foreign realm. At the very beginning, Ing Zhixian had even taken the lead in suggesting that they join forces with Jin Lin, Shi Hong, and the others to encircle and annihilate Chu Feng. Her methods were truly formidable. Today, she suddenly made things difficult for him, causing Chu Feng to sink into silence. After pondering for a moment, he figured out many things. Clang! Chu Feng drew his sword. Divine light swallowed and spat out as the sharp golden tip of the sword closed in on Ing Zhixian. There was a buzz as a golden light soared outside Ing Zhixian's body. That was a deity-level rune. She wore a protective talisman bestowed by a deity on her chest. This was a deity-level treasure that could block an attack from a deity-level evolver. Furthermore, the light emitted by this divine talisman enveloped Ing Wudi and Ing Xiaoxiao within it. It wrapped them up and flew out together. Are you fearless? Chu Feng only had these few simple words. He didn't want to say anything else. There was a buzz as he held the golden battle sword in his hand and gently slashed open that golden light. There was a ding as he easily cut that divine talisman into two halves. At the same time, he didn't disguise himself during this process. His jet-black long hair draped over his shoulders as his true appearance emerged. His body was slender and strong, and his skin was sparkling and translucent like jade. Chu Feng, it's really him. Old friends from the Yin realm, such as Taoist Jin Lin and Buddhist son Shi Hong, recognized him immediately. In the distance, Yuan Shicheng, Yuan, and the others were stupefied. It was actually Great Demon Chu. This old friend from the past had transformed into Shi Fan and rushed over here. This was too heaven-defying. They were brought across the sea of primal chaos by someone from the Yang realm and appeared here. How did Chu Feng get here? Could a person also appear in the broken universe? Besides, what did they see? Chu Feng cut off a deity-level protective talisman with a single slash. He's holding a divine sword in his hand. Someone cried out in surprise. They saw how extraordinary that sword was and naturally believed that this was the source of Chu Feng's strength. Otherwise, no one would believe that he could split open a divine talisman with a single slash. It could only be done by using a weapon of this level. Chu Feng was bursting with heroism, but he also carried anger and a wisp of disappointment and frustration. It was difficult for him to suppress the anger in his chest when Ing Zhixian exposed him in public like this. Even though he had thought of many things and thought of many possibilities, he still felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart right now. He felt slightly bitter. He was a resolute and decisive person. In a split second, he cast aside all complicated emotions and severed the so-called old feelings. His gaze immediately turned ice cold. The golden tip of the sword moved forward and touched the space between Ing Zhexian's eyebrows. It pressed against her lustrous forehead, and beads of blood had already rolled out from there. "Don't! Chu Feng, I beg you to let my elder sister go. Don't kill her," shouted the silver-haired little Lolita. She wept as she blocked the way forward. Her little face was full of pain. She didn't want her elder sister to stand out and speak like that, but she also didn't want Chu Feng to directly kill her elder sister. Her delicate and perfect little face wrinkled when she encountered this kind of thing. She was very conflicted and felt very pained, but she was powerless to change anything. "Chu Feng, I'm sorry," said Ing Wudi. His face was full of bitterness. How could he have expected this kind of thing to happen? He stood in front and used his hand to hold Chu Feng's sword. Fresh blood dripped down as the bones in his fingers were directly split and broken. "Brother-in-law, don't kill her. I beg you," pleaded the silver-haired little Lolita with tears on her face. Buzz. The body of the sword shook lightly and shook Ing Zhexian away, but it didn't injure her anymore. It also shook Ing Xiao away. The long sword in Chu Feng's hand pressed against the space between Ing Zhexian's eyebrows as he said softly, "I really didn't expect this." Unless there was one possibility, Chu Feng simply wouldn't forgive today's betrayal when something like this happened. But he wasn't willing to get entangled with her now. It was all because of Ing Xiao's miserable and tender little face that made him give up on killing her. He coldly shook Ing Zhexian away. Blood was dripping from the space between her eyebrows, but she wasn't heavily injured. Chu Feng turned around and left, rushing towards the exit of the Yang Realm's passageway. "You're not their match. The people from the Yang Realm can't be defeated. You can't defeat them." Ing Zhexian was very calm and cold as she spoke there. "Chu Feng." The god guarding the passageway to the Yang Realm spoke as he looked over coldly. There were people guarding this place, and it wasn't just one god. They were watching coldly just now. Out of modesty, they didn't intervene at the first instance and just looked down on him. Now, Chu Feng actually took the initiative to come over. Even if they were very anxious and excited to complete the mission the Celestial Venerable gave them, they still maintained their silence. "Who said I can't kill the people from a Yang Realm?" said Chu Feng coldly as he shot forward. At this moment, the demon-revealing mirror that was hanging near the exit shone towards Chu Feng. It could be seen that he was indeed the same on the outside and inside. It showed that he was Chu Feng. Chu Feng slashed open this treasured mirror with his sword, causing it to shatter into two pieces and fall to the ground. Boom! This area was in an uproar. The old friend from the Yang Realm simply couldn't believe that this was really Chu Feng. Moreover, he was so powerful. At the same time, the people from the dilapidated universe were also dumbfounded. Some of them had heard of Chu Feng's deeds and passed them by word of mouth. Now, they were all very shocked. This young man killed his way over from the Yang Realm and rushed over here. He dared to challenge the people from the Yang Realm? "Impudent," said a god guarding the passageway. He berated coldly with dignity and disdain. The native of the Yang Realm that they had been searching for painstakingly had actually appeared and even dared to brandish his sword at them. He was simply courting death. From their point of view, Chu Feng had been exposed. Now, he had lost his rationality and abandoned himself to despair. He wanted to foolishly fight them with his life. He really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and didn't know the difference between life and death. "I think you're the one who's impudent." Chu Feng took large strides and arrived in front of them in an instant. He brandished his sword and slashed forward. "Foolish, those who dare to use weapons against gods will have their 9 clans annihilated," said that god. He became increasingly dignified and stretched out a large silver hand to suppress Chu Feng. Chu Feng didn't hesitate in the slightest. He brandished his sword and chopped off a silver god's arm with a puff. Divine blood splattered in all directions and shook the void. That god screamed miserably. How could he have expected that he would use a secret technique to directly suppress Chu Feng? In the end, it was easily neutralized by him, and one of his arms was chopped off. He suddenly stood up. It was impossible for him to calmly sit there anymore, let alone maintain his dignity. In a split second, this god used his strongest divine technique to kill Chu Feng and fight him with his life on the line. However, a cold light flickered and illuminated the secret realm. With a puff, not only did Chu Feng's sword break through his secret technique, but it also chopped off his head and sent it flying. In the blink of an eye, the body of this Yang realm divine, evolver, and the head that flew out were annihilated inch by inch in the void. Ah! He cried out in horror, but he couldn't change anything. In a split second, a few gods in the vicinity stood up. They were shocked and horrified. What kind of strength was this? He killed a god with one sword. He was at least at the peak of the divine general realm. They still hadn't realized that this was a divine king who had reached the middle stage and was looking down on them. Behind them, Ing Wudi was petrified. Ing Xiaoxiao's little mouth formed an O shape. The others were like clay sculptures as they stood there in disbelief. In particular, Taoist Jin Lin, Yuan Shicheng, Yuan, and the others who came from the Yin realm were too shocked. That was Chu Feng. They hadn't seen him for a year, but he could actually slaughter a god. Ing Zhixin didn't face the battlefield earlier and had her back to it. Now that she felt that the situation was strange, she gently turned around to look at the battlefield. Uft, uft. With a slash of Chu Feng's sword, a god's head flew into the air. When he struck twice, two gods roared in anger, and their bloody heads rushed into the air. "I'm Chu Feng," he shouted coldly. Chapter 1001. The god's head flew up into the air. Moreover, there were two of them. It was as if they were flying together. Everyone was flabbergasted and felt their hair stand on end. Ing Zhixin turned around just in time to see this scene. Her cold and beautiful face immediately stiffened. This was the slaughter of a god. She hadn't seen that young evolver from the Yin realm in the past for a year. After experiencing great ups and downs, the people around him all died, and he actually grew to this stage. No one dared to believe it. This was too illusory, like a myth. Which of those who could reach this stage wasn't a well-known figure? They were all direct descendants of various races. But who could slaughter a god at this age? This was too shocking. Even if it was a genius from the Yang realm, a god-level genius who fought for the fortune of the Cold Pond at the end of the Secret Realm, could they rise so quickly? It was also impossible. Normally speaking, there might have been people who became gods at this age in ancient times, but they were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Moreover, they all had their own opportunities. Now, a living example was placed in front of them. Was he going to stand shoulder to shoulder with the legendary figures from the ancient Yang realm? Bang! The two gods' corpses exploded. There was nothing more shocking than this. In front of everyone, Chu Feng killed a god so simply and fiercely. It made everyone feel a chill down their spine. The old friends from the Yin realm were all petrified. Back then, they were at the same level as Chu Feng, but what about now? He had truly become a great demon king. Ing Zhixin's towering chest rose and fell slightly. Her breath was like the fragrance of orchids. She never expected that Chu Feng could be strong to this extent. That was a god, and Chu Feng killed him just like that. He swept them with his sword. The silver-haired little Lolita was full of worry just now, but now her large eyes were looking around with all her might. She was incomparably happy and almost cried out in joy. Ing Wudi was like a wooden man. He stood there with his mouth wide open. He couldn't believe what he was seeing and didn't move at all. He's slaughtering a god. Princess Yuan of the Origin Demon race seemed to be talking in her sleep. Her voice was very low, and her eyes seemed to be in a trance. The people from the dilapidated universe were crying out in alarm, and the people from the Yang realm were also palpitating. There weren't just these gods guarding the passage. There were 8 of them on the surface. Now that the head of a god had flown up, how could they sit still? All of them suddenly stood up, their divine might surging, simply about to shatter the heavens and tear apart heaven and earth. These people were all shining, resplendent, and dazzling. A single one of them was enough to suppress the Yin realm universe. They were all ruthless characters. However, when facing Chu Feng, their expressions were so serious, and they drew their weapons. Moreover, they immediately sent voice transmissions to request for assistance. Come quickly. There were deities that released low roars, transmitting information and summoning divine kings to descend. However, he discovered that the soul light he emitted actually exploded in the void. It was like a splendid firework rain that fluttered in the air and was destroyed just like that. In this place, there were densely packed runes that strangled his divine sense. Messages couldn't be sent out. Those who dare to use weapons against deities will have their entire family annihilated. Someone said that to me just now. Now that I am chopping deities, what can I do? Chu Feng was very cold, but his hands didn't stop at all. His movements were too fast, boundlessly violent, and like a thunderbolt, the sword light was like a rainbow, like lightning. Golden light surged through the sky and cut through everything in its path. Kill! The remaining deities roared loudly. Their bodies were covered in light, shattering space. Their strength was too terrifying. If this secret realm wasn't so special, it would definitely be destroyed. However, no matter how much they shone, activated their secret techniques, and attacked Chu Feng, they couldn't change anything. One of them displayed a dermic world. It was indomitable. It was unknown how tall it was. Its black divine body was majestic, and it was awe-inspiring in this world. However, it was still useless. When he stomped down with cold, killing intent, he didn't trample Chu Feng into minced meat. Instead, he himself screamed miserably, and the protective runes on his body collapsed. That massive foot was like a broken mountain, and blood gushed out violently as it fell to the ground. Chu Feng soared into the sky and swept out with his sword, splitting that indomitable body from the space between the eyebrows into two halves. It made him immediately howl in grief, and then his voice stopped abruptly. He fell with a rumble, smashing into the ground, and blood flowed like a river. Now that Chu Feng was killing, he wasn't only attacking the physical body, but also the soul light. As such, even a deity couldn't survive. Even if they had life-saving methods, they weren't enough after Chu Feng went all out. Those so-called divine runes and other things were all broken into pieces and turned into fine powder. In front of absolute strength, they were all lacking. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. This was the sound of sword light tearing apart the void. It was too sharp, too incisive, and there was nothing it couldn't overcome. From the beginning to the end, even if Chu Feng was speaking, his movements didn't stop. Killing intent overflowed, and the sword light was like a rainbow as he unleashed a massacre here. An expanse of sword light interweaved. The deity's body was disintegrating and breaking into pieces. Under the shocked gazes of some people in the Yang realm, under their horrified state of mind, the deities were easily slaughtered. A red-haired deity with disheveled hair was holding a large halberd. He wanted to fight to the death against Chu Feng, but in the end, Chu Feng only raised his hand and slashed the halberd in half. Blood splashed in front of the passageway. Another golden-robed deity was very senior. He was used to being domineering normally, but under Chu Feng's divine sword, his shoulder was slashed diagonally. He screamed miserably as his soul light turned into rain and was rapidly annihilated. A golden-haired female deity with extraordinary looks and was rather beautiful whipped forward. It was as if lightning and fire were surging. Mountains collapsed and the earth cracked, and the symbols of order flared up. However, in the end, she could only scream miserably. That lightning and fire divine whip was broken, and she herself was also cut in half at the waist by Chu Feng. Then, the space between her brows was pierced by a finger, and she died a violent death. This intimidated everyone. Almost as soon as they exchanged blows, the 8 deities all died. They were cleanly and efficiently slaughtered by Chu Feng. At the final checkpoint, everyone was trembling. What kind of might was this? Those are deities, and he killed them just like that. In the end, there were divine generals in the dark who attacked without a sound. Black light erupted. That was a terrifying blade radiance. Those two people held weapons like the Grim Reaper's scythe in their hands as they attacked Chu Feng. In the end, their weapons were broken amidst cracking sounds. The two of them continuously resisted, but they were still no match for him. In the blink of an eye, they were chopped into pieces by Chu Feng. Their soul light exploded, and their bodies and souls were destroyed. More than 10 deities had died. They were quickly defeated just like that. Chu Feng carried the divine sword that was dripping with blood. He didn't stop for even a moment and rushed into the passageway. At the final juncture, his cold gaze swept over everyone. All outstanding heroes immediately lowered their heads, regardless of whether they were from the Yang realm, the dilapidated universe, or even his old friends from the Yin realm. Jiang Luoshan was the most shocked. This was someone who came from the same place as her, and the two of them were friends. They had even drunk and slept in the same bed. Even though it was only slightly charming and gentle and nothing much happened, her impression of him was too deep. Now, the development of this old friend had completely exceeded her expectations. "Brother-in-law, you must succeed," the silver-haired little Lolita prayed inwardly as she clenched her small fists. Ingwoody was also very nervous. He knew that Chu Feng wanted to sneak into the Yang realm by force. Ing Zhixian's breathing was a little hurried. Her exceptionally beautiful face was no longer as calm as it was in the past. She was also staring at the final checkpoint that was pervaded with primal chaos chi. Chu Feng decisively retreated and left that place. Even though he saw the boundary membrane and saw the dense Yang Qi surging in the Yang realm, he fled back again. The information transmitted to him by the 12 deity rank little animals he subdued earlier was correct. There was something strange and great danger here. It made him feel that he would perish if he forced his way in. The road ahead was already cut off. This wasn't a good place, and there was no way to break through. Chu Feng was very decisive. He was going to flee along the path he came from. There was no need to delay any longer. Roar! With a roar, terrifying silver runes condensed into a beam of light. It didn't target anyone else and only covered the area where Chu Feng was. That was a deity rank evolver's light shout. His divine voice evolved into laws. This was a powerful secret technique that suppressed Chu Feng. Even though Chu Feng had just sealed off this place and killed a group of deities at the first possible moment, he was still exposed. What kind of characters were those in the distance? They were all geniuses. Some of them were saints, some were illuminators, and some were even deity rank evolvers. The most important thing was that they were all geniuses from the Yang realm and had the sharpest spiritual senses. Even though the secret realm was extremely vast and far away, they still received news that something had happened here in the shortest amount of time possible. Then they reacted and killed their way over. Chu Feng, you still dare to appear? The great martial deity is looking for you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to render meritorious service. This was a deity rank genius who was self-confident in his peerless strength. He could crush god generals and sweep through all the deities before him. Even though he already knew that Chu Feng had slaughtered the deities here, he wasn't afraid at all. Clearly, he still hadn't figured out the situation and didn't know Chu Feng's true depth. This person was indeed very strong, far stronger than the deities who had just died. However, in front of Chu Feng, a mid-stage evolver at the Divine King realm who lived up to his name, he was nothing. He was still not enough. Thank me? Hee. Chu Feng sneered. Since there was no way to sneak in, then he would go on a killing spree and wash these deities and geniuses in the Yang realm with blood. I'll send you on your way. Come and thank me properly. Chu Feng's voice was cold. This time, he didn't use his sword. Instead, he smashed his fist over. He activated the famous divine technique of the Yang realm, Lightning Fist. It was too fast and too ferocious. There was no way to dodge it at all. Chu Feng's golden fist shattered the sky and collided with the dagger in that person's hand with terrifying energy. Metal fragments exploded. The deity rank dagger was blasted apart by Chu Feng's fist. Moreover, the arm of that deity rank young realm genius also turned into a bloody mist at the first moment. He screamed miserably. Then his body also collapsed inch by inch. In the end, Chu Feng's fist passed through his body. With a violent jolt, this person exploded and disintegrated into a rain of blood on the spot. What kind of scene was this? The old friends from the Yang realm, the races from the broken universe, and some geniuses from the Yang realm all had goosebumps all over their bodies. They felt incomparably shocked. This is a genius from the Yang realm? They're nothing more than this. Chu Feng stood there. His indifferent voice also carried a hint of coldness and boundless killing intent. Not far away, Xiao Zun, Jin Chuanting, the white-robed scholar, Chun Han, and the others were like clay sculptures. All of them were stiff on the spot. Not long ago, this group of saint-level geniuses were still arrogant and looked down on Shurfan. In the end, in the blink of an eye, they were shocked to discover that he was a huge crocodile. Perhaps it could be said that he was a demon king from hell. He even dared to slaughter gods, could do it, and was doing it without the slightest scruple. The group of saint-level geniuses was speechless. They couldn't say anything because they really couldn't compare to the great demon king Chu Feng. As for the group of deity rank geniuses and god generals, they all drew their weapons. Their bodies glowed, and the energy radiance overflowed into the sky. It was as if one sun after another was burning. They wanted to attack Chu Feng. Hee, all of you can die. I'll kill gods and trample the heavens. Who can stop me? Chu Feng sneered and looked disdainfully at the gods. Chapter 1002. The younger, god-level evolver from the Yang realm was penetrated by Chu Feng's fist and disintegrated, turning into blood and bones. This shook the secret realm and made many people speechless. What kind of method was this? The people from the Yin realm were killing the gods, especially since many people knew that Chu Feng had come for him. They originally thought that once the gods descended and appeared in front of him, they would be easily captured and killed. Who would have thought that the native of the Yin realm in their eyes, a lowly insect at the saint level, would advance by leaps and bounds in a year and become a god, or even reach an even higher level? He was actually able to easily kill a god here. It was like a fantasy story and was hard to accept. Originally, they were like giant dragons overlooking the land, but in the end, the weak ant in their eyes had directly overturned the giant dragon in the sky and killed it. This kind of contrast was too strong. An ant raised its head, punched out, and killed a giant dragon. This scene petrified all the gods. In the distance, a blue-haired goddess frowned. She wasn't tall, but her curves were astonishing, and she was petite and exquisite. Her skin was lustrous, and her blue hair fluttered in the wind. Her eyes were deep, and she looked very beautiful and sweet. At this moment, a crack appeared between her snow-white brows, revealing a divine radiance. It was actually a vertical eye, and a golden beam burst out, suddenly attacking Chu Feng. Chu Feng was astonished. This group of geniuses from the Yang realm was really conceited. His successive god punishers hadn't intimidated them, but someone actually attacked at the first instance. Clang! In the blink of an eye, his index finger shone brilliantly and dispersed the golden beam of light. However, he also felt a strong impact. That blue-hair goddess was very strong. At the very least, she was well known among the gods. Ordinary people definitely couldn't block it and would be killed by this beam. Kill him. This was like a signal, and the others followed suit. A youth with a green-gold cauldron hanging above his head and a heavenly dagger axe pointed forward. This was a man with extraordinary strength, and his green hair danced in the wind as he began to attack. Boom! Above his head, the green-gold cauldron shone. Large amounts of green waves rippled out from the cauldron's mouth, and then they turned into waves of sword energy. This type of attack was a bit astonishing. It was clearly a cauldron, but radiance surged out from the opening of the cauldron like a spring. In the end, it turned into sword energy, forming waves that swept outwards. Heaven and earth trembled, and the void was split apart. This scene was extremely shocking. Chu Feng was naturally at the center of the sword chi sea, and he was drowned by the layers of sword light. The sword light was so monstrous that it seemed as if it wanted to mince everything. Not far away, the others also made their move. A number of them attacked at the same time, and they were all god-tier evolvers. They could not bear to see Chu Feng facing them with his head held high. How could a former ant challenge the dignity of God? A powerful deity had to come out and kill them quickly. These people were all very strong. One of them brandished a 12-jointed golden whip. Another wielded a long halberd, and another brandished a demonic blade that erupted with black light. All of them attacked simultaneously. Chu Feng's mouth twisted into a cold smile. His body flickered as he shot forward. He didn't dodge, but rather wanted to bathe them in blood. Boom! Now, his speed was too fast as he used the lightning fist. This kind of divine skill was universally shocking and carried a demonic nature. Previously, when young lady she passed it on to him, she told him that it was possible that the fist technique would control the person, and not the person controlling the fist. Chu Feng was like a bolt of lightning as he weaved through this place. His entire body moved along with his fists, and thunder exploded the void. Bang! The man with the heavenly dagger axe and a green-gold cauldron floating above his head was the first to feel the violent energy invasion. The waves formed by the sword energy surging out of the cauldron were blasted through by Chu Feng and dispersed. The energy turbulence surged in the secret realm. In a split second, this area was riddled with holes and destroyed beyond recognition. If this was the Een realm universe, the starry sky would have exploded and caused a large area of destruction. The planets would have been chopped down by the divine sword light and turned into cosmic dust. But this secret realm was different. It was a ruin left behind from the earliest era of the broken universe. Now, there were wave-like runes rippling about, protecting themselves. The divine attack was actually compressed into a very small area. After the void ruptured, it reformed again and didn't spread very far. The geniuses of the Yang realm revealed astonished expressions. This secret realm really wasn't weak. The firmness of heaven and earth couldn't compare to the Yang realm, but it was much stronger than the other places in the broken universe. Chi chi chi. An expanse of sword light soared and poured out from the mouth of the cauldron, sweeping toward Chu Feng. But everything was crushed and scattered under his sparkling fists. A halberd swept over from the side, but Chu Feng caught it with one hand and broke it with a crack. Chi! The heaven and earth were split into two halves. The owner of the green-gold cauldron floating above his head was counterattacking. His green hair scattered behind him as he faced Chu Feng head-on. He brandished the heavenly dagger axe in his hand. Clang! Chu Feng's lightning fist swung the heavenly dagger axe high into the air, and it immediately deformed. The blade of the heavenly dagger axe disappeared, struck by the fist. The energy shook the void until it was full of black cracks. That green-haired man used a strange footwork technique as if he was strolling in the sea of stars. Light and shadow were misty and numerous stars appeared here. The man-made, natural moat was like the emergence of the real universe. He wanted to increase the distance between him and Chu Feng. However, how fast was Chu Feng's movements? He punched out with a bang, wanting to destroy this person's body and soul with this second strike. At the crucial moment, the green-haired man threw out the heavenly dagger axe. At the same time, he urged the green-gold cauldron above his head to smash forward and block Chu Feng's attack. He didn't expect Chu Feng to be so strong. They had just exchanged blows, but he was already going to take his life. Crack! The heavenly dagger axe broke. At the same time, there was a violent tremor. A large part of the green-gold cauldron caved in from Chu Feng's punch. It let out a buzzing sound and flourished with light. It flew out and collided with the green-haired man's body with a bang. Puffed. His bones were broken and his tendons snapped. His body flew out, and then his entire body started to disintegrate. Divine blood splattered in all directions as he endured an unimaginable attack. He couldn't hold on any longer. At the same time, Chu Feng moved. He was like a Kuan Peng spreading its wings. Everywhere he passed by, there was a rain of blood and foul wind. The person who wielded the halberd just now was caught by him and directly split into two pieces. Even his soul light couldn't escape. That man who raised the 12-section golden whip wanted to retreat, but in the end, he was caught up by Chu Feng. He was stomped into two pieces high up in the air, breaking from his spine. Divine blood surged and shocked all directions. In everyone's eyes, this was simply a great demon who wantonly massacred gods and swept through everything before him. How could the group of geniuses in the Yang realm endure this? Buzz! Divine light rippled soundlessly, and a purple beam of light flew over. It was too fast, and the void was blasted through. The heaven and earth were actually slightly wailing. This was an extremely terrifying attack. Chu Feng suddenly turned around and discovered that it was that blue-haired goddess in the distance. Even though she was petite and exquisite and looked very sweet, her attacks were truly decisive and terrifying. It was still the divine radiance that shot out from the crack between her brows, but the color was different. It was many times more powerful than before. Chu Feng discovered that a few drops of blood actually fell from between his fingers. They were injured by that beam of light. Not far away, someone cried out in a low voice. They recognized this woman's identity and knew the race she was from. This was an ancient race, a member of the human race's top bloodline alliance. They believed themselves to have transcended the scope of humans and stood on their own. They no longer considered themselves humans and were extremely terrifying. The divine radiance contained within this kind of vertical, I could attack the weak and attack the strong. This woman's attack power was extremely astonishing. When she suddenly attacked, she could penetrate the physique of a divine general and injure the skin of a divine king. He's an evolver, at least at the peak of the divine general realm. The blue-haired woman spoke. She was very astonished. This attack allowed her to test out a portion of Chu Feng's strength. Bang! The entire heaven and earth rumbled incessantly. Chu Feng moved and swooped down towards her. Enough! In the distance, a divine general roared. He had a head of gray hair and was very old. He quickly reached out with a large gray hand. Mist surged as he grabbed at Chu Feng. How could an existence of this level tolerate Chu Feng's slaughter? Now, he finally took action and wanted to kill Chu Feng. Enough my ass! How could Chu Feng be afraid? He continued to kill his way forward. He didn't stop along the way and killed two more divine evolvers along the way. Blood dripped down. At the same time, he also arrived in front of the blue-haired goddess. No matter how much divine radiance shot out from between her brows, he was still able to suppress her. At this time, the divine general's large hand arrived behind Chu Feng and was about to grab him. However, he didn't even turn his head. He grabbed forward with one hand and slightly turned his body to the side. His other hand met the large gray hand behind him. Bang! He restrained the blue-haired woman and then suddenly exerted force, breaking her bones and tendons. He then casually tossed her out. In an instant, she turned into a mist of blood. Chu Feng didn't turn back. His other hand grabbed the divine general's large hand. The sound of bones cracking rang out, and it was rather ear-piercing. That old divine general let out a muffled groan. His body trembled as he was pulled over by Chu Feng from afar. Bang! In the collision with Chu Feng, his body was more intense. However, Chu Feng easily blasted him apart in the end. An old divine general had fallen. Kill him. There were many divine-level geniuses here. There were also some old divine generals and even divine kings. At this moment, they roared angrily. In just an instant, Chu Feng had killed gods in succession. How could they tolerate this? Chu Feng's entire body shone as he charged about. Another few gods were torn into pieces. These weren't ordinary evolvers, but geniuses from the Yang realm. To some orthodoxies, their deaths were a great loss. Buzz! In Chu Feng's surroundings, a rain of light soared. It was exceptionally dazzling, like fireworks blossoming, like meteors converging to form a waterfall, condensing into a river, and then surging here. He used the little 6 rays of time technique and began a massacre here. In a short period of contact, there were gods who lost their lives one after another. Divine blood dyed the heaven and earth red. Chilly winds howled angrily as strange phenomena appeared in succession. However, there were no scenes like the heavens crying. That was because this was a primordial secret realm. The laws here were terrifying, and the spatial level was far higher than that of other regions. Chu Feng was killing gods. He advanced while stepping on the corpses of gods. His feet were covered in blood. In the distance, the souls of the old friends from the Yin Realm universe were trembling. Was this really Chu Feng? To actually be able to do this, it was even more of a legend than a legend. He's using those mutant techniques from the foreign realm. Ing Wudi's expression was unnatural and complicated. He was shocked by Chu Feng's battle prowess and also sighed because of the methods he used. Brother-in-law, the silver-haired little Lolita, also saw what was going on. For a moment, her face was full of tears. She knew very well what kind of terrifying consequences this kind of mutant technique would bring. From now on, it would be the beginning of a slide into the dark abyss. It was a path of no return. His lifespan wouldn't be much, and his later years would be extremely miserable. Chapter 1003. As soon as the little 6 rays of time was unleashed, the divinity granules in all directions boiled. Chu Feng had just killed many gods, and now a rain of light was rising and flying over from all directions. It was extremely dazzling. These particles all carried divine attributes and were the most original substances. They seeped into Chu Feng's skin and submerged into every single one of his cells, filling up his soul light. The exchange just now didn't consume much, but the replenishment was so fierce. Chu Feng's pores opened up, and his skin was sparkling and translucent from head to toe. In addition, the most precious ancestral Taoist substance also surged over. He stood among the source particles as if he had turned into eternity. The scene of this instant was forever imprinted in everyone's hearts. Beneath his feet were the corpses of gods, and the ground was stained with blood. He stood with his head held high and looked disdainfully at the gods of the Yang realm. Boom! A silver-robed divine king made a move. He took a step forward, and a terrifying black crack appeared in the space of the secret realm. The void where he stood was disintegrating like porcelain. He couldn't restrain his anger, and his white hair danced wildly. If this went on, the native of the Yin realm whom he had to kill was going to massacre this place soon. He would kill a large number of gods, so how could they endure this? As a divine king, he was in charge of guarding this place. If a bloodbath like that happened, he would definitely be held responsible. Boom! The divine king moved, and everyone was shocked. Everyone's hearts were palpitating, and the gods were retreating because they didn't want to be involved. The silver-robed divine king had made a move. Could that native of the Yin realm still resist? The silver-robed divine king took a step forward and already arrived in front of them. His divine might was vast, and if it was in the Yin realm universe, the starry sky wouldn't be able to withstand his might. The space around him was severed by the energy he emitted, and it turned into a black abyss. He himself was dazzling, and silver light illuminated all directions. Behind him was pitch black, and he roared as if he had come from hell. He arrived in front of them and stomped toward Chu Feng. It was extremely tyrannical, and the void was like a painting scroll in a hurricane. It rustled and then broke into pieces. This was the power of a divine king. He wanted to stomp the native of the Yin realm into a bloody pulp and crush him to death. When a divine king is angered, blood will flow like a river. With a raise of his hand, a clan can be wiped out in an instant. Crushing the ants of the netherworld is as easy as flipping his hand. Someone sighed in admiration. Many of the people present felt that Chu Feng was in grave danger. The place he was standing on was already in tatters and was covered by the soul of a divine king. How was he going to defend? It's quite a sullen death. The people in the dilapidated universe discussed in a low voice. They were hiding at the end of the horizon. The entire secret realm shone on its own. Symbols covered this place densely, protecting this heaven and earth. Otherwise, everyone would be blasted to death by the shock waves, turning into dust. Brother-in-law, the silver-haired little Loli's large eyes were red, full of tears. She was extremely worried. In the underworld universe, many people's hearts were in their throats. Many old friends hoped that Chu Feng could win. Of course, there were also a few people who were hostile and had cold expressions. Bang! At this moment, Chu Feng's body illuminated the world, and it was blazing to the extreme. It was like a volcano from the era of creation had emerged from within the chaos, and it contained fragments of the Grand Tao that gushed out and illuminated the entire world. Chu Feng rose into the air and swung his right leg to meet the silver-robed God King head-on. Rumble. Between heaven and earth, the Divine King's order resonated. All kinds of symbols bloomed like beautiful flower buds and took root in the void. It was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes, and tears of blood flowed down. The silver-robed God King let out a muffled groan. He came quickly, and he retreated quickly as well. One of his legs was trembling slightly, and the great pain was unbearable. Everyone was stunned. Was this the strength of that young evolver from the underworld? He could shake a God King. Moreover, the silver-robed God King came from the Yang realm, and he was much stronger than the evolvers in this universe. Many people were like clay sculptures, especially the gods who had spoken just now and believed that Chu Feng would definitely die. They all shut their mouths in shame. This had subverted their understanding of the world. Such a young God King. Was he going to stand shoulder to shoulder with those famous people in the history books? Buzz. The void exploded. How could Chu Feng hesitate after killing his way to this step? Even if he saw God King, he would still go and kill him. He stepped on the void. An astonishing energy surged around his body. Golden light was like the morning glow, pouring out from all the cells in his body without holding anything back. At this juncture, all his potential was mobilized. After all, he was facing a God King from the Yang realm, and he had risen in a universe with incomplete rules and a great loss of Tao laws. He was congenitally deficient, so he went all out. Chu Feng's aura was too terrifying. The nearby gods all felt the pressure and discomfort. Some of their faces were pale, and they almost staggered and fell to the ground. They decisively retreated. The void exploded, and golden energy clouds engulfed everything. Chu Feng's might was unrivaled as he charged over. His fists were sparkling and translucent, and his corporeal body was flawless. His soul light even condensed into colorful light that was gorgeous and terrifying. This was the embodiment of incomparably powerful strength. This time, he used the Vairocana fist, a divine technique that belonged to the Yang realm. Divine splendor illuminated everything. Once this kind of fist intent was unleashed, it innately suppressed everyone and wanted to purify all life. Even the silver-robed God King was affected, and his aura weakened slightly. Bang, bang, bang. Next, Chu Feng blasted over punch after punch. Everyone saw order fragments fluttering there, and golden energy was boiling. They couldn't see the silhouette of Chu Feng anymore. They only saw a sparkling fist crushing the world and suppressing everything. The two of them fought fiercely. In a short moment, divine king blood splashed everywhere. The silver-robed God King's arms spasmed, and cracks appeared on his bones. As for his fist, it was even more badly mutilated, and the sparkling finger bones could be seen clearly. His injuries weren't light. However, Chu Feng was frowning and sighing softly. Ever since his rapid rise, he had even become a divine king now. It could be said that he could move unhindered in the world, and he had always suppressed his opponents with his inferiority. But when he encountered someone from the Yang realm and fought with an evolver of the same level, he couldn't suppress them anymore. In the past, he could kill an opponent of a higher realm, but now he couldn't anymore. When fighting with someone of the same level, he actually only occupied the upper hand and couldn't suppress them all the way. This made him dissatisfied and unwilling. If this was the case, how would he be able to intimidate geniuses of the same level once he entered the Yang realm? When that time came, he naturally wouldn't be able to sweep his opponents away. At the same level, there were enemies in the world and obstacles everywhere. Kill! Chu Feng roared angrily. His entire body shone as 12 sword wings appeared on his side. When they flapped, sword cries shook the sky and cut open the secret realm. The silver-robed God King was startled and furious. He felt that the other party seemed to have been provoked, and his strength rose sharply. In a short while, sword scars were left on his body, making him bleed profusely. He was a divine king. The most hateful thing was that he was clearly at a disadvantage. So why was the other party so angry and unconvinced? Truly preposterous. The silver-robed God King howled as he suffered a terrifying attack. Chu Feng used the little 6 rays of time technique to absorb divinity granules and ancestral Taoist matter from his wounds and the blood that splashed out. Qi. At this time, Chu Feng used the qi of yin and yang, turning into 2 rays of black and white light that intertwined with terrifying might. This was a typical peerless divine technique. Puffed. The silver-robed God King couldn't dodge in time. One of his arms was cut off and flew out. One had to know that the qi of yin and yang was a peerless divine technique that used rare materials of heaven and earth as the foundation and was slowly refined. In the distance, some old friends from the Yin realm cried out in alarm. Ying Zhexian's expression changed slightly as she thought of the trip to the foreign realm. This was the secret technique she had taught Chu Feng back then. It was the yin and yang part of the wonderful 7 treasures technique. If it was combined with her 5-color divine light, it would have the power to move unhindered in the world and sweep away all enemies. Even in the Yang realm, the wonderful 7 treasures technique was a rare treasure. It was one of the highest level ultimate secret techniques. Qi. Chu Feng's soul light surged as he shook out the qi of yin and yang once again. It was as if the primal chaos had just split apart and all living things had just grown. The qi of yin and yang circulated in the world and became the most fundamental thing. This time, the silver-robed God King was even more miserable. He was cut in half at the waist, and blood flowed like a fountain. As Chu Feng's strength increased, this yin and yang divine light also became more and more terrifying. Suddenly, the void was annihilated without a sound. A terrifying red wooden arrow flew over and pierced through the void. It arrived in front of Chu Feng without a sound. Bang! In the end, his shoulder was pierced through, bringing with it a large expanse of bloody mist. Even his shoulder blade had split open, and the ghastly white bones were visible. The scene was somewhat terrifying. Another God King appeared and secretly attacked Chu Feng, injuring him. This was originally a sure-kill arrow that was aimed at Chu Feng's head. It was going to explode his soul, but he managed to evade it at the last moment. Brother-in-law, you have to live well. In the future, you'll be the strongest. The silver-haired little Lolita was worried and wept softly. She was afraid that he would perish here. Humph! Chu Feng snorted coldly and erupted with divine might. Did they really think he was easy to kill? This was the first time he had been heavily injured like this since the start of the battle. His bones crackled as he rapidly recovered his corporeal body. At the same time, he didn't stop at all and was still charging forward to suppress and kill the silver-robed God King. He absorbed his divinity granules and ancestral Taoist matter. The silver-robed God King was in a miserable state. He was targeted by Chu Feng, who was unable to restrain his anger. How could he resist after Chu Feng displayed his ferocious might? He was completely suppressed by Chu Feng. Chu Feng's sword intent seemed to transform into light of the extreme Tao. Tens of thousands of rays shot out violently and strangled the silver-robed God King, who only had half a body left. The little 6 rays of time technique operated, and Chu Feng obtained astonishing replenishment. Then, he changed directions and attacked the archer. In reality, that person had already taken action a long time ago. He shot arrow after arrow in an attempt to save the silver-robed God King, but it didn't change anything. Chu Feng moved unhindered in this place and found that person. He killed his way over and fought a bloody battle with him. He could already confirm that there were only 2 God Kings in this secret realm at the moment. He didn't hold back in the slightest during this battle. In the end, he used his lightning fist to penetrate that person's chest and thunder erupted. That was a God King, yet he was killed here and a rain of blood danced in the air. In order to prevent this person from coming back to life, Chu Feng naturally used the little 6 rays of time technique to absorb all the source of divinity, leaving only a pile of corpse powder behind. 2 God Kings had fallen, both killed by a single person. This shook the secret realm, and everyone was petrified. Some divine generals were unwilling to accept this and wanted to leave quietly by burrowing into the ground. There were also some who were secretly making preparations and wanted to use forbidden weapons and other unconventional secret treasures to kill Chu Feng. However, these people had just moved when Chu Feng raised his arm. Sword light was like a rainbow. Amidst the plopping sounds, 6 heads fell to the ground in succession. All of them were God Kings. For a moment, Chu Feng stood in front of the divine general's corpses and stepped on the remnant blood of God Kings. He looked disdainfully in all directions. The hearts of all the gods palpitated, and many of them had no choice but to lower their heads. In the distance, Jiang Luoshan was dumbfounded. This old friend's performance simply exceeded her previous expectations. The God Kings of the Yang realm were all executed. Yuan Shicheng, Yuan Yuan, Jin Lin, Shi Hong, and the others were also dumbstruck. Ying Xiaoxiao was very happy. Her silver hair that reached her waist was very bright. She was so lively that she almost jumped up, but she held it in. After all, there were many divine grade geniuses in the Yang realm in the distance, and they were all still there. However, she wasn't afraid at all. So what if there were many geniuses in the Yang realm? They might all become blood and bones. Chapter 1004. Wisps of white mist surrounded Ying Zhixian, making her look somewhat hazy. She was like a fairy that had been banished to the mortal world. She was calm and silent as she was covered by the white mist, and her expression couldn't be seen. Only her eyes were very beautiful and deep. She was staring at Chu Feng on the battlefield. Ying Xiaoxiao tilted her head and looked at her older sister with watery eyes. In the end, she said in a small voice, "From now on, I won't call him brother-in-law anymore. I'll call him Big Brother Chu." Her voice was very soft, very low, and slightly sad. Swoosh! Ying Zhixian's eyes were clear as she glanced at her younger sister, but she didn't say anything in the end. She started to focus on the battlefield again. In the distance, a young god-level expert wanted to make a move, but in the end, he encountered a sword light that swept across the sky. Chu Feng beheaded him, and divine blood sprayed high into the air. "Everyone, let's kill him together. What are you waiting for? Don't cower, or else this demon from the Yin realm will annihilate all of us. Otherwise, let him nibble at us one by one." A man in azure gold armor shouted loudly, calling for everyone to join hands. Chi! A sword light flew out. Chu Feng stood in the air while he stood in place. His right hand slashed out with a sword light that locked onto that person. With one slash, the azure armor was split open, and the light protecting his body dispersed. A crack split open from the space between his eyebrows, and then blood gushed out. That person was split into 2 halves. Everyone's expressions changed. This demon was too powerful. Whoever dared to stick their head out and make a move would incur a fatal disaster. But could they not resist? He would still make a move and bathe this place in blood. For a moment, the evolvers from the Yang realm were enraged. All of them shouted in secret and communicated with each other spiritually, wanting to join forces to slay the demon. Where's the 8th deity in the world? Lord Qi Ming, please make a move to slay this demon. Someone called out anxiously with a hurried voice. Using spiritual voice transmission in front of a divine king? Do you think I'm just a decoration? Do you think I can't intercept your secret spiritual voice? Chu Feng said coldly. Generally speaking, spiritual voice transmission was very secretive and wouldn't be detected by outsiders. However, Chu Feng's realm was right there. He was at the mid-stage divine king realm. With a sweep of his soul light, nothing could be hidden from him. He could see a lot of spiritual information. A group of geniuses from the Yang realm wanted to join forces. With a cold intent, he switched to a silver halberd in his hand. The snow-white halberd's blade surged with a cold light, and he suddenly swept the halberd across. This strike was simply heaven-rending and earth-rending, causing ghosts to wail and gods to howl. It was an indiscriminate attack against everyone. In the blink of an eye, the evolvers let out blood-curdling screams as their limbs were severed. Some had their heads sent flying, some had their shoulders chopped off, and some had their waist snapped in half. The scene was rather tragic. Some of them were god-level experts, some were saints, and some exploded the moment their bodies were broken. How could many people withstand the power of a god king? This was a tragic disaster. Chu Feng had truly massacred this place, and the geniuses of the Yang realm could be said to have suffered disastrous losses. It was just a single strike, and over 60 people had lost their lives. There should be the disciples and followers of the great vile beast here, right? Get the hell out here, Chu Feng said coldly. An incarnation of the great vile lord of the great vile realm descended upon the lesser Een and killed the big black yak, Ouyang Feng, yellow cattle, old donkey, and everyone else. He even killed Chu Feng's parents. This was an unhealable wound in his heart, and it was his greatest hatred. 100 years had passed in the foreign realm, and he had experienced a relatively long period of time. But whenever he recalled those old friends, familiar faces would appear in his mind, and he would feel frustrated and depressed. 100 years had passed, and he could no longer return to the past. He felt a stabbing pain in his heart. He hated the great vile lineage to the extreme, and he wished he could exterminate them immediately. This area was in an uproar, but no one dared to open their mouths to provoke him, and no one dared to take the initiative to stand out either. Chu Feng made his move. He had already captured some information through the soul light just now, and he knew the identity and background of some people. He raised the large halberd and blasted it toward a certain area. This didn't seem like a vertical chop, but more like a violent smash. That divine general-grade halberd let out a buzzing sound and expanded dramatically. It was as if a silver mountain had collapsed, and it blasted that area. A few deity-grade evolvers roared furiously. Their hair danced chaotically, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They did everything they could to resist, but they still turned into blood and bones, disintegrating from the impact. Chu Feng shouted, "Disciples and followers of the great vile old scoundrel, stand out." In addition, disciples of the orthodoxies of Hyunyi, Origin, and Chaos, come out too. This area was silent. Many people were furious, but they didn't dare to contradict him. In particular, the disciples and followers of the Great Vile and Hyunyi Celestial Venerables were all in turmoil. They wished they could immediately kill Chu Feng, but they didn't have the strength to do so. They were all lying dormant and enduring silently. In the distance, some old friends who came from a lesser Een were indescribably shaken. Jiang Luoshun, Jin Lin, and the others all had complicated expressions. Back then, the disciples and disciples of the four great celestial venerables entered the netherworld cosmos in a domineering manner, torturing and killing experts from all walks of life. The god of thunder, the Skyblade, the red spider lily, and the others all died in battle. Their blood splashed across the starry sky, and no one could stop them. It was extremely tragic. But just a year had passed, and Chu Feng had risen to power. He could actually slaughter deities. Now, he had killed his way here and suppressed a group of deity-grade geniuses from the Yang realm. Enough, you're too arrogant and brash. At this time, a great red sun gushed out from the end of the horizon. Moreover, it was rapidly expanding, covering the entire land. It was a brilliant red, blazing and gorgeous. That was a figure with a head full of disheveled scarlet hair. He stood at the center of the end of the land. He wasn't tall, but he was like a giant that opened the heavens, awing the world. This was a young evolver with a grave and stern expression. His body carried a demonic nature. The god ranked 8th in the Yang realm, Crimson Illumination, had arrived. Earlier, he had personally charged into that black cold pond to seize the fortune. He had missed the battle not long ago, and now his true body had appeared. Crimson Illumination was approaching, and a boundless aura engulfed the world. The heaven and earth were thoroughly red, as if scarlet flames were burning the 9 heavens. In the next moment, another expanse of blue light appeared at the end of the red horizon. It rapidly blossomed, rising and falling like a vast ocean. The god ranked 97th in the Yang realm, Blue Maple, also appeared. He also struggled free from the cold pond, bringing with him gloomy mist. They rushed over at top speed. Moreover, there were 2 women following behind Crimson Illumination. They were both illustrious goddesses of the Yang realm, ranked in the hundreds among the deities. Their strength was extremely shocking. However, the 2 women could be considered Crimson Illumination's followers. Bang! Crimson Illumination attacked decisively at the first moment. He stretched out a large hand that was bright red like blood and enveloped the heaven and earth. A palm slapped toward Shufeng. He was extremely powerful. He was only at the deity level now, but he could step into the divine general domain at any time. He dared to contend against the divine king level Shufeng. It was only because he was the 8th god of the Yang realm that he dared to shake divine kings in the Yang realm and even slaughter them. Otherwise, the Yang realm was so vast and incomparably vast. What right did he have to show disdain for the masses, move unhindered in the Yang realm, and be ranked in the top 10 among the deities? The 8th god has finally come. Eliminate this demon. Someone shouted loudly, extremely agitated and excited. The group of geniuses that came from the Yang realm were all future heaven-gifted figures on the path of evolution. Yet they actually encountered a calamity here. They were suppressed by the people of the Yang realm and casually killed, causing many people to feel indignant. Now that they saw Crimson Illumination arrive, the group of people immediately became indescribably excited. Shufeng looked coldly at this person. He was really conceited and tyrannical enough. He was at the level of a deity and was just a step away from entering the divine general domain. Yet he dared to contend against him. He raised his hand and smashed it forward. His fist was sparkling and translucent, exploding the vast sky. The sky was filled with resplendent order runes as he collided head-on with Crimson Illumination's large hand. Bang! The fist and the palm collided and lightning erupted. The dozen or so powerful evolvers closest to him were all shaken into pieces, directly disappearing in the lightning. Everyone was horrified by this scene, and they quickly retreated. This kind of collision, this kind of confrontation, was hard for ordinary people to imagine. It was easy for gods to disintegrate in the dazzling light. Shufeng frowned and felt danger again. What level of evolver was he? Divine King. But Crimson Illumination was only at the peak of the god realm and was close to the divine general level. Yet he could actually contend against him head-on and not be obliterated at the first moment. Especially when it was Crimson Illumination who took the initiative to attack just now. He slapped down with a large scarlet hand, wanting to directly kill him, a divine king. How confident and tyrannical was this? This made Shufeng feel an enormous pressure. This was the first time someone had crossed realms to fight him. In the past, it had always been him fighting the stronger ones, but now it was truly unimaginable. A peak of the god dared to contend against a divine king. How crazy was this? Shufeng's heart was heavy. Even though he felt very sullen, he had to admit that the universe he was in was incomplete. The great Tao fragments were incomplete, and the order runes were seriously flawed. There was really a gap between the top experts that had grown up and the top geniuses of the Yang realm. Waves of cheers came from afar. Many evolvers from the Yang realm had fiery eyes as they waited for the moment Crimson Illumination slaughtered the divine king. It wasn't that this kind of thing hadn't happened before. In the vast territory of the Yang realm, how could the god ranked 8th become famous and shake the world? It was naturally because of the battle of slaughtering the divine king. However, Crimson Illumination himself felt even more strained. His expression was solemn. He originally thought he could easily slaughter the so-called divine king of the Yang realm, but now it seemed that wasn't the case. He felt that if this youth from the Yang realm had grown up in the Yang realm, he wouldn't necessarily be much inferior to him. In a struggle for supremacy on the same level, perhaps he could contend against him. Boom! Crimson Illumination circulated a special breathing technique. Between his mouth and nose, a dazzling mist appeared, and energy surged around his body. His aura was rising sharply. Slaughter the divine king of the Yang realm, many people shouted. Not long ago, they were suppressed too much by Chu Feng. Everyone experienced the threat of death. Finally, the people of the Yang realm were going to suppress and kill the devil of the Yang realm. Chu Feng snorted coldly. Between his mouth and nose was full of white mist. The rain of energy around him was like a burning flame that wanted to burn through the 33 heavens. He activated the little 6 rays of time technique and brandished his lightning fist from time to time. He was firm, fierce, and domineering. The descent of a divine king. Amidst the banging sounds, Crimson Illumination was beaten by Chu Feng until he retreated step by step. His entire body was slightly convulsing. After Chu Feng flipped out, he couldn't bear it anymore. Big Brother Chu, you can do it. The silver-haired little Lolita prayed inwardly. She was afraid that Chu Feng would be defeated and die here. In the end, he can't compare to the divine genius of the Yang realm. If they were fighting on the same realm, he would have already lost, Ying Zhixian said softly. Ying Zhixian said softly. She stood there and stared at the battlefield. Even if he successfully enters the Yang realm, he'll be drowned by the large number of geniuses in the vast land of the Yang realm. His divine halo will fade, and he'll return to being ordinary. It'll be very difficult for him to rise up. The silver-haired little Lolita was unconvinced and very indignant. She said, "Why don't you say that the laws of the Yang realm aren't complete, causing a flaw in the evolutionary path of an evolver? If he enters the Yang realm, Big Brother Chu Feng will definitely be able to make up for all these flaws. He can beat 10 or 100 geniuses in the Yang realm by himself." At this moment, after exchanging 200 moves, Crimson Illumination vomited blood. He was struck by Chu Feng's palm. One of his arms was almost separated from his body. He was dripping with blood, and his hair was disheveled. Bang! Chu Feng displayed his might and fully released the might of a divine king. He beat Crimson Illumination until he continuously coughed up blood and staggered. One of his arms finally flew off and fell to the ground after being cut by Chu Feng's palm blade. Crimson Illumination. The 2 goddesses who were ranked in the top hundreds of the Yang realm were instantly anxious. They charged over in a split second. Let alone people like them who were ranked in the front. Even if they were gods ranked in the top 10,000, they would still be considered famous geniuses in the vast Yang realm. They were enough to stand proudly in a region. Bang! Chu Feng brandished his fists. He attacked Crimson Illumination while facing these 2 people. With a Virokana fist, one of them was shaken to the point where her lotus-like arm cracked. Blood gushed out from her sparkling white body. He was also activating the Yin and Yang Qi. When his soul light flickered violently, the power of Yin and Yang boiled and shot out terrifying fragments of the great Tao. The other woman was sliced in half at the waist, and the bloody light was astonishing. Kill! Crimson Illumination was seething with anger. His head of scarlet hair danced chaotically as he fought to the death with Chu Feng. He used his secret skill and once again erupted with terrifying divine might as he charged over. At the same time, Blue Maple also made his move. The geniuses ranked in the top 100 were not easy to deal with. They were extremely powerful, but they still couldn't stop Chu Feng. After Crimson Illumination was targeted by Chu Feng, his body was sent flying. There were wounds all over his body, and he was covered in cracks. Even his white bones could be seen. In the end, he was suppressed by Chu Feng's large hand to the point where he almost knelt on the ground. His hands were raised to resist, but they were still spasming and his arms were about to break. Jin Lin, Yuan Yuan, Ing Wudi, and the others were all astonished. Chu Feng really suppressed everyone who descended from the Yang realm by himself. Ing Xiao secretly clenched her small fists tightly, and her eyes flickered with the glow of excitement. Shock was written all over Jiang Luoshan's face. It was very difficult to imagine that an old friend who came from the same place as her would actually be so overbearing. He had beaten the Yang realm's divine grade geniuses to the point where they bent their waists as if they wanted to bow down and worship him. During this process, Chu Feng was still attacking in other directions. There were people who wanted to leave the battlefield quietly, but they were pierced by his terrifying sword light and died a violent death. While he was suppressing a few divine grade geniuses, he was also paying attention to the entire battlefield. Everyone was terrified. Was this because he didn't want to let anyone go? Blue Maple roared angrily. He was also being suppressed and was inferior to Crimson Illumination. His legs were bent, and his whole body was surrounded by order runes as he was suppressed to his knees. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and their hearts trembled. That was a top-notch genius from the Yang realm. At the same time, Crimson Illumination also couldn't hold on any longer. His arms were broken, and the bones all over his body made explosive sounds. He was suppressed by Chu Feng's large hand until he lowered his head. His legs couldn't support his body and bent down. No! Crimson Illumination roared angrily. Chu Feng looked toward the end of the world, but he didn't feel any joy. He had to step onto his own ultimate path. He had to rise up. Suppressing the Yang realm geniuses like this didn't give him any sense of accomplishment. What he wanted was to defeat and suppress the so-called top-notch geniuses of the Yang realm at the same level. Chapter 1005. At this moment, the crimson glow illuminated the world as if the sunset had dyed the world red. Chu Feng stood with his head held high as he gazed at the end of the horizon. A true divine king had descended. In front of him, Crimson's hair was disheveled as he was finally suppressed to his knees. This caused a huge commotion. The 8th-ranked divine being in the Yang realm was famous throughout millions of miles. Even the celestial venerables cherished talent and were willing to accept him as their last disciple. But now, he was actually being suppressed by a native from the Yang realm. No matter how his energy surged and his body was covered in blood, he couldn't do anything. Crimson was extremely furious and wanted to roar to shatter the mountains and rivers. However, this was completely useless. His hair was disheveled, and the bones in his legs were broken from the pressure. His arms were twisted and shattered more than once just now. However, creatures at this level could be reborn from a single drop of blood and grow arms immediately. Now they were starting to disintegrate again. Blue Maple was the same. The bones in his knees were crushed, and he struggled to support himself with his arms to block Chu Feng's strangling attack. In front of him, Chu Feng stood tall and straight. He only used one arm, but his palm covered the area and suppressed them at the same time. Crimson's 2 followers, the 2 goddesses ranked in the hundreds among the divine beings and were usually high and mighty, were now kneeling on the ground and unable to move. Their bodies started to disintegrate, and they were about to die. The speed at which their bodies reassembled couldn't keep up with the speed at which they were collapsing. This was because the large hand in midair was suppressing them. Runes circulated, cutting their divine bones and corroding their divine blood. Chu Feng, Crimson roared. This was the greatest humiliation of his life. He was kneeling in front of a native from the Yin realm, and his followers were about to die. He was the 8th god in the world and had killed divine kings before. Moreover, he had killed more than one, but now he was so sullen. In the distance, regardless of whether it was the evolvers from the broken universe or the geniuses from the Yang realm, all of them were greatly shaken. Today's events were destined to spread throughout the Yang realm and would affect far and wide. The eighth-ranked god in the world had actually suffered such a dismal defeat. Chu Feng was cold and emotionless. He wasn't satisfied in his heart. If he couldn't kill these people with a raise of his hand, what fun was there as a divine king? There was no sense of accomplishment. He scanned the surroundings and raised his other arm. Sword rays shot out from between his fingers as he began to kill the deities in the area. Fight it out with him. He's going to slaughter all of us in the end. Earlier, for the sake of self-preservation, there were some people who hid at the back and weren't willing to advance. But now, they saw this great devil preparing to refine Qi Ming and the others while killing them at the same time. How could they endure this? Screams could be heard. Behind Crimson Ming, those two beautiful goddesses who possessed a great reputation in the Yang realm disintegrated one after another. Even their soul light was dispersing. The lesser 6 rays of time technique was too tyrannical. Chu Feng absorbed the divinity granules and collected the Tao ancestors' matter to kill his enemies and cultivate in front of everyone. As a result, not only was he unharmed, but his divine might was also increasingly abundant. This shocked many geniuses so much that their faces turned pale. Demonic arts, heretic god, someone said with a trembling voice. Qi. Sword radiance shot out like rainbows, streak after streak, exceptionally dazzling. They continuously shot out, piercing through a few deities. Not every deity was as terrifying as Qi Ming and could block a divine king's attack. How could other evolvers, especially geniuses who had just entered the deity realm, contend against a divine king? Therefore, in this short period of time, this secret realm was rather tragic. Deities bled one after another as they were hacked to death by Chu Feng's finger swords. Now that he was in the divine king's domain, his soul light flickered and his spiritual energy boiled. He could naturally capture who had deep enmity towards him and who had concealed killing intent towards him. Therefore, his hunting was very precise and targeted. The deities were being executed. When the old friends who came from the Yin realm saw Chu Feng casually start a massacre and kill the deities of the Yang realm, all of their scalps went numb and they were dumbstruck. This was subversive. It was truly unimaginable for a single person to suppress so many descenders from the Yang realm. This really is the darkest day. Someone cried out. They were too unwilling to accept this. They were suppressed and massacred by the natives born in the Yin realm that they looked down upon. The Yin realm is just a mass grave. How could such an evolver appear? Could it be that the blood of some almighty or celestial venerable in some great tomb has awakened and created such a character? When these people were fighting with their lives on the line, some were also angrily rebuking and shouting. They were too unwilling to accept this. They originally thought that after coming to this flawed universe, they could look down on all enemies. Who would have thought that they would die here? Chu Feng was astonished when he heard this. He hadn't encountered any of the so-called great tombs of the Yang realm and celestial venerables. So how could he dig up their tombs? Of course, these weren't important at the moment. What annoyed him was that these people from the Yang realm were really used to being high and mighty. Now, they still dared to mention the mass grave. They were courting death. In an instant, he spat out a beam of white light from his mouth. That was the gunmetal qi in his lungs. It turned into a sword light and killed 2 deities with a puff. Spitting out qi to form a sword. Moreover, it was a sword of order. He could kill deities with a single thought. What kind of ability was this? It made many people's pupils contract and their hearts receive an intense shock. The Blade King Ling Chun was absent-minded. Not long ago, he still thought that Shurfan relied on the violet heavenly thunder amethyst to make them feel dejected and depressed. Now, it seemed that they were far inferior and had been teased by a divine king. Puffed. Chu Feng spat out qi to form a sword again and beheaded several very strong deities. Even the Blade King Ling Chun let out a blood-curdling scream. Chu Feng didn't specifically target a small character like him, but he was brushed by that mass of sword qi and half of his body rapidly disintegrated. At the same time, Qi Ming's hair was disheveled and his whole body was covered in blood. He was almost unable to support himself from the refinement. He knelt on the ground, and his whole body spasmed. He was unable to restrain his anger. This was the greatest humiliation in his entire life. How could he be willing to accept this? The dignified eighth deity in the world was kneeling at the feet of someone else, and that person was facing the outstanding heroes with his head held high and suppressing him with a single hand. This kind of contrast was too intense. At the side, Lu Feng was even worse off than him. All the bones in his body were cracked, and scarlet blood splashed out. Moreover, his soul light was dimming. Divine substance granules flew out and were refined by Chu Feng. Attack! The people from the Yang realm were attacking and joining forces to resist Chu Feng. Anyone who didn't resist would die. Ying Xiao Xiao was the happiest. She clenched her small fists in the distance and prayed inwardly, hoping that Chu Feng would be strong to the end and be able to win. Ying Wudi's expression was wooden. This really surpassed his imagination, but he also hoped that Chu Feng would be fine. Jin Lin, Shi Hong, Yuan Yuan, Jiang Luoxin, and the others from the Yin realm all held their breaths as they stood at the end of the horizon and paid close attention. Chu Feng unleashed a massacre. Sword light came out of his mouth, and energy divine radiance came out of his hand as he swept through the enemies in all directions. Blood flowed like a river in this area. The number of deity-grade geniuses from the Yang realm that came couldn't be considered small, but today they suffered a fatal blow and were being strangled. In the center of the battlefield, Chu Feng was like a great demon king as he stood there. He didn't even give chase. He killed his enemies with a raise of his hand and could kill deities with a flip of his hand. It was shocking. Dear Heavenly Venerable, please manifest your spirit. Teachers guarding the other side of the boundary membrane, have you sensed it? Quickly come and save us. Some young evolvers broke down. They were terrified by Chu Feng's massacre. Divine blood was everywhere in this area, and even the ground was dyed red. Some special races revealed their true bodies after their deity-grade evolvers died. They were enormous like mountains, and their blood gushed out like a spring. The scene was terrifying. On the ground, Chu Feng stood alone as he looked down on the masses and unleashed a massacre. Bang! While many people were calling out and praying, there really was movement in the passageway connected to the Yang realm. It emitted a glaring light, and fragments of order fluttered about like sparkling flower petals as they sprinkled over. They're here. Those teachers from our sect have heard the call and sensed it. They're about to descend. Someone was overjoyed and extremely excited. However, what awaited him was a strike from Chu Feng. Yin and Yang Qi circulated as he reaped his head and soul light, killing him. Who's causing trouble? Who dares to harm the Qilin children of our Yang realm? Someone shouted. 8 people walked out in a row from that passageway. They were all golden-robed divine kings and could be considered top-notch experts at this level. Each and every one of them looked down on the world with disdain. Their auras were too powerful. The mountains and rivers trembled because of their appearance. Even a void was exploding. Great Tao fragments appeared and rumbled. Strands of dazzling silk ribbons fell between heaven and earth. The divine sound of the great Tao rumbled and was deafening. Their realms were even higher than Chu Feng's. After all, Chu Feng was still at the mid-stage while these people were all late-stage divine kings. After this group of people appeared, many geniuses in the Yang realm cheered and jumped for joy. They were incomparably excited and stirred up as if they had seen the people closest to them. In almost an instant, these 8 divine kings clearly understood what had happened. Each and every one of them was furious. There was a native of the Yang realm killing the geniuses of the Yang realm. Moreover, this person was precisely the Chu Feng that the great martial deity wanted to find. He had a supreme treasure on him. While they were furious, their eyes also burned with passion. When they saw that the ground was covered in blood and that more than half of the divine-level geniuses that came from the Yang realm had withered away, with not many people left, the corners of their mouths twitched. Their hearts were flustered. How are they going to explain this to those celestial venerables? They could be considered to have neglected their duty and failed to protect this group of experiencers. However, according to their understanding, the strongest in this damaged universe was merely a god. How could they threaten the divine-level geniuses that came from the Yang realm? Moreover, there were indeed two divine kings that came over. In the end, such a tragedy still happened. The 8 golden-robed divine kings were seething with anger. Qi Ming, the 8th god, a divine king, growled. He didn't dare to believe his eyes. Heaven-warping figures like Qi Ming and Lu Feng were about to be refined to death, yet they were actually kneeling on the ground. Courting death, a divine king roared. The 8 peak-level divine kings were furious. It was truly the case that the mountains and rivers lost their color and the sun and moon lost their light. Their golden robes fluttered, forming a destructive energy domain. It was too terrifying. It was unknown how many people were kneeling on the ground. They couldn't bear this kind of pressure. I think you're the ones courting death. Chu Feng didn't move and stood in the field. Even when facing the 8 divine kings, he was still fearless and didn't flee. His attitude was arrogant when he saw the divine kings. He didn't have any emotional fluctuations, and it made the 8 golden-robed divine kings' killing intent even more intense. That native has appeared? He can satisfy my master's wish. The heavens are helping the extreme martial lineage. All of a sudden, a calm but terrifying voice penetrated through the boundary barrier and reverberated in the secret realm. It made the divine kings tremble and tremble. Many people cried out in alarm. All kinds of soul lights flickered. That was the manifestation of intense spiritual fluctuations, and a lot of astonishing information was dispelled. For a moment, the great Tao fragments condensed and turned into flowers that bloomed in the void. This was all caused by the creatures on the other side of the boundary barrier, about to cross over. Chu Feng felt horrified. This person hadn't even arrived yet, but he had already created such a terrifying and oppressive atmosphere. His might was simply unimaginable. The extreme martial lineage's disciple. Of course, what he was most concerned about was the other party's identity. This was the personal disciple of the great enemy he wanted to kill the most. The hearts of the Yang realm geniuses present trembled. This was a famous powerhouse of the extreme martial lineage that surpassed the scope of divine kings. He was one of the disciples that the extreme martial lineage fancied the most. He could be considered a terrifying existence that had 1 foot in the celestial venerable realm. A half-step celestial venerable. This kind of creature was too powerful. He was actually guarding the other side of the passage. He was coming over now. The old friends from the netherworld were all in a daze. How was Chu Feng going to make it through this time? Was he going to perish here? The situation had actually reversed. Half-step celestial venerable? I'll try to kill one today. If I can kill him, the extreme martial old bastard will definitely be heartbroken. Chapter 1006. When the people nearby heard Chu Feng's words, their expressions froze. He wanted to kill a half-step heavenly venerable? Was this what he truly meant? Could it be that he had lost his mind? When talking about heavenly venerables, they were aloof and aloof. They were the heavens. Even if they were praised as half-step heavenly venerables, they still couldn't be provoked. They could look down on divine kings, watch the vicissitudes of time, and view the common people as ants. Their long lifespans gave these creatures enough time to accumulate experience and plan their ultimate path of evolution. Now, although a native of the netherworld had become a king, it was wishful thinking to challenge a half-step heavenly venerable. You really... Nearby, Crimson Ming roared. His body was covered in blood, and all his bones were broken. He couldn't hold on much longer. A green mist appeared on his face. He really wanted to say that Chu Feng was overestimating himself, daring to speak so arrogantly to a half-step heavenly venerable. He was simply courting death. However, he shut his mouth. What qualifications did he have to criticize others now? He had been suppressed by this young man from the netherworld to the point of kneeling on the ground. He had already lost. His face was slightly twisted as he waited for the moment Chu Feng faced death. He believed that no one could save this native of the netherworld. He was courting death with no solution. He only felt that it was a pity that the supreme treasure on Chu Feng had no fate with him. It was destined to fall into the hands of the great martial heavenly venerable. Even an ant dares to look up at the heavens and point fingers at a powerhouse that even deities have to respect. How laughable! In the distance, a golden-robed divine king stood in the void and looked over. His powerful aura made the deities tremble and many evolvers' legs tremble. While speaking, this golden-robed divine king attacked Chu Feng. How could they wait for the great martial heavenly venerable's direct disciple to attack? That would mean that they had failed in their duties. A dazzling five-colored soul light flew over, displaying the might of this divine king. He was at the peak of this level. Fragments of order danced in the air in an exceptionally beautiful manner as they surrounded the soul light. This was the power of a divine king. It condensed the might of heaven and earth as if he was waving the great Tao in battle, suppressing all phenomena in the world and looking down on all life. Otherwise, how could he be a divine king? Bang! Chu Feng dodged this attack, but he didn't leave this area. One of his hands was still suppressing Qi Ming and Lan Feng, the two great gods. That god king frowned. He was really afraid that the two of them would be killed. He was a late god king. Being able to reach this level, he was also a genius when he was young. His foundation was strong enough. Right now, a so-called god genius like Qi Ming was slaughtering a god king. This sort of thing would never happen to a god king like him. He could suppress a god rank evolver. Heaven and earth shook violently. That soul light retreated after a single strike in the void. However, the rumbling sounds in this void became even greater. Strand after strand of wisps appeared. This was the evolution of energy, as well as the appearance of natural laws, releasing terrifying might. At the same time, the other divine kings also opened their divine eyes and stared at Chu Feng together. They exerted great pressure on him. This was a formless attack. Everyone knew that this was a secret battle between god kings. Normally speaking, if 8 god kings were to stare at him at the same time and suppress him with their powerful auras, Chu Feng, a mid-stage god king, might not be able to hold on. Coughing up blood and staggering back would be considered light. If it was serious, his soul light might suffer heavy injuries. It might even be disintegrated by a few of them, causing his spirit to collapse. Oh, god kings! Some people cheered. They were all geniuses from the Yang realm. Among them, there were even some people who knelt down because the 8 god kings were their seniors. At this moment, no one could withstand the auras emitted by the 8 great god kings. It was enough to crush groups of evolvers and turn them into a large area of bloody mist. However, the 8 great god kings restrained their auras and only targeted Chu Feng. Those who were previously suppressed to the ground by them could now get up. Even though they were god kings, it wasn't good for the 8 great powerhouses to put on airs here. The sects behind some people were too terrifying. Some geniuses had too great potential and were destined to surpass them in the future. Bang! Chu Feng encountered an incomparably terrifying pressure. How terrifying was the aura emitted by the 8 great god kings. One could see that the void in his vicinity was being sliced apart. There were tens of thousands of dark cracks that extended for who knew how many kilometers. Everyone felt a chill from head to toe as they further experienced how terrifying creatures like god kings were. Just by paying attention to one person, the aura they emitted was enough to suppress and kill deities. It made Chu Feng, who was also a god king, sway and couldn't hold on any longer. In the distance, the former national goddess Jiang Luoshan, who came from Earth, sighed inwardly. Chu Feng was too powerful, just like he was on Earth. In the end, he encountered a crisis that was difficult to turn around. Jin Lin, Yuan Shicheng, Shi Hong, Yuan, and the others were expressionless. No matter what they were thinking now, it wasn't suitable for them to declare their position. Big Brother Feng. Ing Xiao was very anxious. White mist appeared on Ing Zhixian's face, which was hazy and faintly discernible as she said, "It's easy to break when you're too rigid." He should have retreated a long time ago and returned to the vicinity of the abyss. This is in the Yin realm. It's impossible for him to suppress the geniuses of the Yang realm with a higher realm in the end. The Yang realm is incomparably vast, and experts are as common as trees in a forest. What we've seen is merely the tip of the iceberg. The cultivators that have appeared now are only a corner of the boundless, desolate land. Ing Xiao wanted to use soul light to argue with her in the dark, but at this moment, a rumble rang out in the battlefield like a great earthquake. The 8 great god kings exerted pressure as soul light surged and surged out. They wanted to crush Chu Feng to death with their powerful aura and not give him any chance. They felt that the delay was too long. They probably wouldn't be able to kill the other party in a short time if they were to rely on their aura alone. They could only make the other party feel uncomfortable and could still hold on for a while. Oof. Chu Feng snorted coldly as a stone box lid appeared in his hand. He stuck it to the center of his palm and streaked across the void like a 1,000-armed Buddha moving. When the 8 streaks of soul light surged over, they were all blocked by this stone box lid soundlessly. All the soul light was blocked and couldn't break through. Everyone was shocked. What kind of method was this? A middle stage God King Evolver could block the strangulation of 8 golden-robed God Kings? It was somewhat heaven-defying. The 8 great God Kings were also moved and stunned. But very soon, they were all delighted again. Their gazes were burning with passion as they stared at that stone box lid in Chu Feng's hand. That kind of expression that was said to be aloof and indifferent to the common people was gone. They stared almost greedily at the box lid in Chu Feng's palm. The 8 of them were convinced that this should be the supreme treasure that even the Taiwu sect was searching for. It was an ultimate item that belonged to the Yang realm. As expected, this item had fallen into the hands of the Yin realm's natives. If they seized it, heaven knew how great of a fortune it would bring them. This is an item that even celestial venerables and almighty figures are coveting. It's a supreme treasure that makes them yearn for it incomparably. A God King's voice was trembling as he couldn't contain his excitement. Even though Evolvers at this level didn't possess world-destroying attack power on the solid Yang realm, they were still able to look down on all races when they walked in the mortal world and made countless Evolvers worship them. Now, they had lost their aloof attitude and were coveting the ultimate treasure. Boom! The passage connecting to the Yang realm was shaking. The half-step celestial venerables were coming over. Heaven and earth resonated. Great Tao fragments appeared, condensing into flower buds and then blossoming. Streak after streak of the light of order danced in the air, and the laws traversed the sky. This area suddenly became sacred. Sweet springs gushed out everywhere, and countless golden divine lotuses appeared in the sky. They took root in the void, and the divine scene was shocking. This was the power of a half-step celestial venerable. They had just moved over, but it caused the entire world to change. This place was originally full of divine blood, and the ground was littered with divine corpses. But now it was purified. The arrival of a half-step celestial venerable turned this place into a sacred land, full of auspiciousness and radiance. A rain of light scattered down like countless fluttering petals with a sparkling luster. A carriage slowly arrived, pulled by several divine, general-level vicious beasts. They looked a bit like lions, but their bodies were covered in green scales that flickered with cold light. There were dragon horns on their heads. A middle-aged man sat cross-legged on the carriage. His face was like jade, and he was quite handsome and heroic. His temperament was outstanding, and primal chaos energy curled around him. He was motionless with his eyes closed. One of Imperial Marshal's most beloved disciples, the half-step celestial venerable Jihong, had arrived. Chu Feng revealed the stone case's lid, revealing the ultimate supreme treasure on him. Even someone like Ji Hong couldn't sit still, personally descending and hurrying over. This supreme treasure was too important, the level involved too high. Forget about celestial venerables. Even great figures wanted to obtain it. He had to bring it away as soon as possible, or else something major would happen. There was a pair of boys on the carriage. They were in charge of driving the carriage, and also in charge of serving tea to Ji Hong. At this time, one of the boys shouted, "Een Realm's natives, why aren't you kowtowing after seeing my family's great one? Kneel down and offer up the supreme treasure. Greetings, celestial venerable Ji Hong." It was unknown who it was, but he shouted loudly and knelt down, paying his respects. This person directly omitted the words half-step, calling Ji Hong celestial venerable to express his respect. In reality, it was unknown just how many people here couldn't breathe. When faced with a terrifying half-step celestial venerable like Ji Hong, even their souls were trembling. Even divine generals wanted to kowtow, finding it a bit hard to endure. Even the 8 great divine kings bowed respectfully, lowering their arrogant heads, welcoming him with incomparable respect. Chu Feng stared forward. He ignored that boy, only looking at Ji Hong. This was one of Imperial Marshal's most beloved disciples. He wanted to seize his stone case, and he even wanted him to kneel down and offer it, truly bullying others intolerably, indulging in the wildest fantasies. This was the disciple of his greatest enemy. He really wanted to immediately kill him. Brazen, you have no manners. Why aren't you kneeling down? That boy berated again. Noisy, Chu Feng said coldly. Moreover, a sword swept over, hacking towards the carriage to cut down that boy. Not knowing the difference between life and death, daring to disrespect and celestial venerable. That boy was flustered and exasperated. Even though he knew that there was no way this sword light could break through the carriage and injure him, he was still unconvinced. Who dared to show such disrespect to a half-step celestial venerable follower? That person actually brandished his sword to kill him. Even an ant dares to look up at the heavens. At this time, Ji Hong opened his eyes. With a sudden sound, the light of the great Tao blossomed. Without a sound, the sword light that Chu Feng hacked over was shattered, turning into nothingness. Evil creature, present my Yang realm's supreme treasure, Ji Hong said coldly. His cold eyes that emitted chaotic energy had already begun to stare at Chu Feng. Many people felt that Chu Feng was finished. Perhaps a half-step celestial venerable's gaze could kill him. Half-step celestial venerable, your old bastard already lost a Tao body in the netherworld. What are you being domineering about? Kneel down and receive the decree. Chu Feng was truly fearless as he shouted at Ji Hong. Moreover, he immediately took out a decree. He wouldn't take the risk and rely on his own strength to resist this person. With a shake of his hand, a golden decree appeared, wanting to suppress and kill this person. With a boom, this decree became larger. Golden light was dazzling, illuminating the world. It released the true might of a celestial venerable as it smashed towards Ji Hong. Chapter 1007. What kind of situation was this? Ordering a half-step celestial to kneel and accept the decree? Was this Chu Feng crazy? However, everyone was just stunned when they felt their scalps explode. Their bodies cracked, and they bled all over. Everyone couldn't bear it and knelt down. Involuntarily, the gods prostrated themselves in worship towards Chu Feng. Their bodies betrayed their hearts and were completely out of control. This was an instinctive reverence, like herbivores seeing a beast king. They were naturally fearful. Everyone was trembling with fear and couldn't stand it all. They knelt on the ground and continuously kowtowed. This was still the result of Chu Feng controlling the celestial decree to attack the front. He didn't want to hurt the people in the broken universe. Otherwise, this area would definitely be finished, and all the evolvers would be annihilated. A golden decree flew out and was used by Chu Feng like a brick. It directly smashed towards Ji Hong. Millions and millions of strands of golden light and great Tao fragments surged. It was as if the mountains and seas had burst a dam as it whistled over. This kind of power was too fierce. Who could resist? Along the way, there were some gods in this direction, but in the end, they all trembled and couldn't move. It was as if snowflakes had suddenly encountered a great furnace. They melted in an instant and evaporated completely. This scene made the world mourn. Many evolvers lay on the ground, their bodies spasming and their souls trembling. They didn't dare to raise their heads. Such a frightening scene shocked everyone. This was the power of the celestial decree. It flew over nimbly, and the great Tao fragments it blossomed destroyed all the gods along the way without the slightest suspense. The 8 golden-robed divine kings roared in anger and let out mournful roars. They wanted to evade. Who dared to collide with the celestial decree? That was courting death. However, it was simply too late. The celestial decree was activated by Chu Feng. It broke through the limits of time and some kind of shackles of the world. It arrived in an instant. In the end, the 8 great divine kings had no choice but to risk their lives. The energy around them boiled, and their soul light even more rumbled. They wanted to protect themselves and do their best to survive. Unfortunately, they had been overthinking things. Wherever the Empyrean's decree passed, even the golden-robed god kings, the most powerful experts in their respective realms, exploded. Their arms, their chests, they all transformed into a mist of blood. At the same time, fine cracks also appeared on their heads that they had deliberately protected in their soul light. Then they completely disintegrated with a bang. No, how terrifying were the 8 great experts. Any one of them that walked in the world would be respected by the various races and become the honored guest of some powerful dynasties. But now, they were even worse than scarecrows. In their final moments, they could only release a furious roar of unwillingness. They were filled with grief and indignation, resentment and humiliation. They all disintegrated, dying cleanly. Not a single one of the 8 great golden-robed kings remained, completely disappearing. Even the last 8 blasts of bloody mist completely evaporated, their bodies and souls wiped out. In the wilderness, there was only the sound of heavy breathing. There wasn't the slightest bit of noise. The deities all knelt on the ground, shivering in fear. This was the power of an Empyrean. This decree could resist an Empyrean's attack. So who could face it head-on? If they weren't at this level, it wouldn't matter how many people there were. If they tried to force their way through, they would only die in vain. There would be no hope. All of this happened in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, surpassing the limits of time. It was so fast that the gods were still in a daze, and the 8 golden-robed god kings had already died. Roar! The divine, general-level, vicious beasts were roaring. Those were the half-step Empyrean Jihong's chariot pulling divine beasts. Now they all stood up, wanting to escape and fight with their lives on the line, but what use was there? Even the god kings had died, let alone them. Even with the protection of Jihong's runes, it wasn't enough. The 6 lion-like vicious beasts that were covered in cyan-colored scales exploded in the first instant. Then their blood and bones burned, turning into ashes. As for the Emperor carriage, it also broke apart inch by inch, rapidly turning into fine powder. This was a precious carriage made from rare heavenly materials in the Yang realm, yet it was as weak as paper now. Save me, Empyrean! The boy who berated Chu Feng earlier was now crying out in horror. Naturally, he was using his soul light to transmit his voice. There was simply no time to truly rely on his mouth to speak. The decree broke through the speed limit of this part of the universe. Jihong wanted to save him, but he couldn't even take care of himself. He was locked onto by those millions and millions of strands of golden light, and the terrifying and majestic decree enveloped him. He himself still wanted to escape. That boy screamed miserably. His soul light collapsed, and nothing unexpected happened. He disintegrated from head to toe, turning into a mass of bloody mist before dissipating. The other boy also died tragically. His corporeal body and soul were completely destroyed. Jihong's emperor carriage exploded with a bang. The heavenly materials and earthly treasures had just danced in the air when they turned into ashes again. The terrifying blood chi of that half-step Empyrean was surging, but it was also burning. This scene was enough to shock the world. Not to mention others, even Chu Feng himself had a kind of horrified feeling. He had already estimated the degree of terror of the Golden Decree, but he didn't expect that he had still underestimated it. It was actually powerful to this extent. The war chariots of the 8 great divine kings and half-step Empyreans were as weak as porcelain, collapsing upon contact. Now it was Jihong's turn. Cold sweat appeared on Chu Feng's back. Back then, fortunately, he used the stone box to take away the Empyrean's decree at the first possible moment. Otherwise, if the other party found an opportunity to use the decree to resist when he was intercepting and killing the gods of the Yang realm and the primal chaos, the consequences would be too horrible to contemplate. Jihong was enraged. A dignified half-step Empyrean descended into this dilapidated universe. He should be worshipped by all living beings, but what did he encounter now? A great disaster was looming over him. As powerful as he was, if he was cautious and vigilant, he could definitely avoid it, but he was careless. He looked down on all things in this world and the common people. So how could he place a native in his eyes? In the end, the cruel reality gave him a head-on blow. From the very beginning, the decree had locked onto him after it was activated, making his scalp tingle. As for the others, they were merely affected by the shockwaves and weren't the main target of the decree's attack. After the Golden Decree entered the passageway connected to the Yang realm, it blotted out the sky and covered the earth, not giving Jihong any space to move. No matter how he roared and erupted with divine might, he was still suppressed by the might of an Empyrean. It was true that he was a half-step Empyrean, but he only had half a foot in here and couldn't be considered a true life form of this level. Thus, he was covered in blood, his bones were broken, and his corporeal body was collapsing. He had suffered heavy injuries. Sigh, this decree is incomplete in the end. Chu Feng sighed. Otherwise, the complete decree would most likely be able to kill Jihong. Jihong was furious. He was already so miserable, but that brat was still making sarcastic remarks. The Golden Decree erupted. Its attacks didn't end there. It was breaking apart into pieces, but this process was even more terrifying. When it completely broke apart, it released endless energy and symbols, inflicting serious damage on the other party. Pooh! That passageway rumbled. Primal chaos exploded, and even the realm membrane was pierced through. Jihong cried out miserably. His body was breaking apart into pieces. Even someone as powerful as him couldn't hold on any longer. His body was destroyed, and even if he could be reborn from a single drop of blood, the injuries he suffered were still unimaginable. If his opponent injured him like this, then he would just admit defeat. In a battle of the same level, there were winners and losers, so there wasn't much to say. However, this was done by a little native from the Yin realm, and it almost made him suffer a fatal disaster. He was blasted into the realm membrane and almost died. He was in an incredibly sorry state. So how could he tolerate this? The passageway connected to the Yang realm was practically destroyed. After a long time had passed, there were chaotic streams of energy and surging chaotic energy. Jihong opened up a path with great difficulty. He opened up another small path with great difficulty, and then his figure appeared again. His entire body was covered in blood, and his hair was disheveled. For a half-step Empyrean, this was just too sullen. He had never experienced this type of thing before. This type of experience was just too miserable. Chu Feng, you filthy native from the mass grave. What else do you have to say? If I don't torture and kill you for 10,000 years, I swear I won't become an Empyrean. Jihong was furious. Once a half-step Empyrean became angry and made an oath, blood would definitely flow like rivers, and the great earth would be dyed scarlet red. This was an extremely terrifying event in this world. However, What left him furious was that everyone in the secret realm was suppressed by his aura until they knelt there, shivering all over. Only that native was still perfectly fine, standing there, not moving at all. Chu Feng held the stone case in hand, resisting the pressure of a half-step Empyrean. He wasn't intimidated by his aura at all. He stood there without fear, his head held high. "Ji Hong, you really are talkative," Chu Feng said indifferently, his eyes cold. He stood there, his tall and strong body like a statue of a demonic god, steady and calm. Ji Hong wanted to slap him to death with a single slap. The other party actually dared to speak to him like this. Just it was a half-step Empyrean. This native directly called him by his name and was still so calm, as if he had nothing to fear and even had a stance of looking down on him. Those who didn't know might even think that Chu Feng was an Empyrean. This made Ji Hong furious. The other party was looking down on him, as well as humiliating him. What right did a little native have to be so arrogant, not knowing the difference between life and death? The so-called ant doesn't have the qualifications to look up to the heavens and torture you for 10,000 years, Ji Hong declared. Magical sounds surged and great Tao fragments danced about. It was as if a great bell was shaking, covering the entire world. However, Chu Feng sneered, remaining unmoved. He said, "Ji Hong, kneel down and continue to receive this king's decree." Before speaking, golden light already flashed in his hand. Divine splendor covered tens of thousands of feet. A complete Empyrean decree flew out from the stone case, blasting forward murderously. The newly opened passage was extremely narrow and not that wide. Ji Hong's pupil shrank. It was difficult for him to dodge, but it was too late. At this moment, he really wanted to curse out loud. F***CK. Chapter 1008. Was there no end to it? Ji Hong was shocked and furious in his heart, and, at the same time, he felt his head swell up. The unforeseen event today had exceeded his imagination. A native of the netherworld had actually successively produced 2 heavenly exalt decrees, and it was heaven-defying to the point it made him want to vomit blood. Ji Hong was already heavily injured. The first time he saw it was just an incomplete decree. Now that a complete decree had appeared, how could he not be terrified? Even though he was a half-step Empyrean, he still felt some fear. There was a red line within him, knowing what level of power he couldn't provoke. Even though his reaction was fast, immediately wishing to escape, it was still too late. This decree flew out, covering the sky, and earth covering that passage. Boom! In that instant, the golden decree erupted. One could vaguely see a majestic figure appear, reaching out a large hand and slapping towards Ji Hong. That was the carrier of the great Tao, the embodiment of natural laws. It was accompanied by surging chaotic energy. That palm was pitch black like ink, about to shatter the void, erase all things. No matter how strong Ji Hong was, doing everything he could to resist, he still couldn't hold on. His bones were immediately broken, and he coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. His entire body was sent flying. What others saw was a large black hand, the palm of an Empyrean condensed from the runes of the decree. But what Ji Hong saw was order, the embodiment of an Empyrean profound meaning. This left him horrified. He truly couldn't block it. It was just a single strike, yet he was about to break apart again. The complete Empyrean decree was terrifying after all. Kill! Ji Hong was going all out. His body was disintegrating, but he didn't want his soul light to collapse as well. That would cause too much damage to him. It was possible that his Tao foundation would be severed, and he might even die. A precious ring appeared, flowing with brilliant colors, illuminating heaven and earth. This was a secret treasure he activated, a half-step Empyrean level treasure. Earlier on, he couldn't bear to use it, but now, in order to save his life, in order to survive, he had no choice but to activate it. Crack! However, in the end, this sparkling blue bracelet had just been enlarged to the size of a millstone when it shattered into pieces. Its metallic luster dimmed, It became a useless weapon. Boom! The Empyrean's magical decree shone, becoming more and more resplendent, golden light surging. The large black hand that reached out from the paper became more and more terrifying, slapping Ji-hong until he flew out, his body exploding. In the end, he couldn't hold on any longer. His body reconstructed several times, but it was useless. He exploded several times, dripping with blood. He suffered unimaginable injuries. Even his soul light was splitting into pieces. It was destined to injure the foundation of his great Tao. Evil creature, native. Ji-hong roared in anger. How long would it take for him to recover from this injury? Compared to his opponents, he would be at a disadvantage in the future. At the same time, his crisis hadn't been resolved. The life and death tribulation was still ongoing, and he might die here. The large hand within the golden decree finally disappeared, but it became more and more dangerous. The decree burned, divine might surging. There were imprints left behind on its surface, shining with blinding light. Bang! At this moment, the golden decree fell down and wrapped around Ji-hong's body that was reassembling once again. It whipped him until he exploded and his soul light turned into fragments. Blood and bones splashed everywhere. The scene was very bloody. Ji-hong screamed miserably. He felt that he was going to die. This was an unimaginable disaster. Could it be that he was going to die in such a sullen manner? However, he was truly unwilling and struggled with all his might. Crack! The golden decree broke apart into pieces, and this was also its most dangerous moment. When it broke apart, it released the reddest wave of supreme energy that carried destructive power. Bang! Ji-hong was bombarded by the golden decree. Even his bloody mist was burning and evaporating. His broken soul light screamed miserably as it was wrapped up by a ball of golden light. It was suppressed and obliterated as it charged towards the boundary membrane and penetrated into the Yang realm. Everyone was indescribably shaken. The apex martial saint's direct disciple Ji-hong had actually fallen to such a state. It was too miserable. Could he survive? No one knew. Chu Feng frowned. He didn't see Ji-hong die with his own eyes, so he felt somewhat uneasy all along. After that, he decisively prepared to leave. He couldn't delay any longer. However, in the instant that the boundary membrane was silent, Ji-hong's broken soul light appeared with a bang. There were also wisps of bloody mist. He actually didn't die, but his injuries were too severe, so he couldn't reassemble his true body immediately. Ji-hong knew that the reason he could survive wasn't because he was powerful enough to be on par with the Celestial Venerable, but because there was a problem with this decree. This wasn't a decree personally written by the Celestial Venerable. It was only stamped with his seal. As such, he survived, but his injuries were too severe. Some people cheered. They were all excited when they saw Ji-hong appear again at the boundary membrane. This time, Chu Feng's decree was exhausted, right? What could he use to resist? You really are persistent. Ji-hong, kneel down again to receive the decree, shouted Chu Feng. You're just bluffing. I'll kill you. Ji-hong's voice was incomparably cold. No matter what, he wouldn't believe that Chu Feng still had a third celestial venerable decree. However, he was dumbfounded in the next moment. Another golden paper flew out from that stone box, shining with a powerful radiance that made him tremble. F***CK. He was cursing. This was truly preposterous. He was bullying others intolerably. He was also too miserable. Could it be that he was really going to die this time? Even the others found it hard to believe. All of them knelt on the ground while shivering. They were suppressed by that kind of powerful might and couldn't budge an inch. Chu Feng threw this decree at Ji-hong without the slightest hesitation. Ah! Ji-hong screamed miserably. He was blasted to the boundary membrane by that decree. That time, even the passage was destroyed. He screamed miserably and then became silent again. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Chu Feng let out a sigh. This was an extremely badly damaged decree. After he finished using this one, he really didn't have any more. Back then, when he was in the Een Realm universe, he intercepted and obtained this badly damaged decree. He intercepted and killed the god ships twice in the primal chaos and obtained two relatively intact decrees. However, part of one of the intact decrees was destroyed when he was exploring the Wooden City. Now, all three decrees had been used up. Chu Feng was fairly decisive. He attacked with the divine sword in his hand and beheaded the eighth god under the heavens, Qi Ming, who was kneeling on the ground. He chopped off his head and extinguished his soul light. After that, Lu Feng also died. This god that was ranked in the top 100 was also beheaded by Chu Feng. His body and soul were both destroyed. The main reason was that after Chu Feng took out the celestial venerable decree, everyone here knelt down and shivered like a leaf. Chu Feng activated 3 celestial venerable decrees in a row, suppressing many evolvers in the secret realm until they trembled. Who could withstand it? Chu Feng himself had the protection of the stone box and wasn't affected. Therefore, he killed the gods very smoothly this time and didn't encounter any resistance. Chu Feng started a massacre and attacked continuously, specifically killing the god-ranked geniuses. For a moment, the blood of gods splattered everywhere. You guys find a chance to enter the Yang realm. Chu Feng spoke secretly and transmitted his voice to the 12 snow-white god-rank animals. They were his eyes and ears. After a simple warning, he went far away in an instant. He didn't barge into the Yang realm because an instinctive feeling terrified him. He kept feeling that it was extremely dangerous over there and that something bad was about to happen. Chu Feng fled and rushed toward the direction of the Een Realm universe at the first possible moment. Boom! His speed was too fast. He entered the primal chaos and then entered the stone box, crossing this dangerous sea of chaos. In the end, he successfully broke into the Een Realm universe. He didn't stop for a moment and rushed toward destination. In the broken universe, there was divine blood everywhere in that secret realm. Almost all the god-rank evolvers that descended had died. This time, the Yang realm suffered heavy losses. This area had simply become a divine tomb. Boom! The world membrane was pierced through and a terrifying figure appeared. He looked down on the past, present, and future and erupted with boundless divine might. This was a celestial venerable. He had rushed over. Celestial Venerable Extreme Marshal. Someone was shocked. Extreme Marshal had appeared. His troublesome disciple Ji Hong was a half-step Celestial Venerable, but he was killed by Chu Feng. Chapter 1009. Tai Wu had come. This was a true celestial sovereign. There were some regions in the vast Yang realm that had temples erected for him. His image was consecrated and worshipped by the various clans. Now, the appearance of such a legendary figure made people's hearts tremble. Even their souls were trembling. At the level of a heavenly venerable, they could already play in the Yang realm. They were experts that could truly stir up the world. They were aloof, lived for a long time, and grasped the ultimate method. Not to mention them, even the arrival of their disciples would cause a huge storm that could cause the rise and fall of a dynasty. Those who didn't die in the secret realm kowtowed in worship. Some of them were the disciples and disciples of the great martial lineage. They were incomparably excited to see the arrival of the founder of the sect. For countless years, the only things that could be seen in the world were the statues of these creatures in temples. How could one see their flesh and blood? Tai Wu was expressionless. A ball of blood and soul light was throbbing in his right palm. Then, he let out a light shout and reconstructed a figure. It was Ji Hong. Ji Hong hadn't died yet. At the last moment, his body and soul were almost destroyed. He activated the ancient talisman his master left for him and summoned an incarnation of Tai Wu. This still wasn't Tai Wu's true body. He didn't have time to appear because he had been confronting his old enemy for a year. It was impossible for him to rush over personally. Master! Ji Hong came back to life and immediately prostrated on the ground. He was ashamed and angry at the same time. He was a half-step heavenly venerable, but he was almost killed. He had no choice but to alarm his master. This made his face burn up. One had to know that this wasn't caused by an opponent of the same level. It was just a small native of the Yang realm, yet he had almost died. It was truly humiliating. Master, I've caused trouble for you. Jihong knelt there and softly asked for forgiveness. He knew that his master's battle with that old enemy had reached a climax. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so desperate for that supreme treasure lost in the Yang realm and couldn't spare any time now. It wasn't easy for an incarnation to appear to save him today. Taiwu nodded with incomparable regret because he already knew that the native had appeared not long ago with the ultimate treasure of the Yang realm. Unfortunately, he was just a little bit off this time. He brushed past him and was still not fated. Personally coming to the Yang realm again? He wouldn't do this no matter what. If he lost another incarnation, his true body in the Yang realm would be unstable, and his opponent would take advantage of it. Everyone looked at the half-step Empyrean kneeling on the ground, so respectful towards the great marshal. They felt more and more pressure. They were far more terrifying than the ancestors of the previous sections. After that, Taiwu disappeared and returned to the world of the living. I'll go kill the enemy. I will get that treasure from Master. Jihong opened his mouth and said 2 sentences in a row. He was going to head to the underworld universe and was going all out. Shua, a decree descended from the sky. This was left for him by Taiwu, able to protect him as he crossed the sea of primal chaos in the netherworld. This was to support him in making a trip over. That secret treasure was extremely important to Extreme Marshal. Everyone was shocked. No one had expected things to develop to this point. Boom! Jihong moved, disappearing from the secret realm. Countless people's hearts trembled, frantically chasing after him. They really wanted to follow him, wanted to see the final result. But how could they catch up with him? They could only see him enter the starry sky and step into the primal chaos that led to the Een realm universe. Chi! But before he left, a lump of true blood and a few soul lights flew out from the top of his head. He had also made preparations, fearing that he would encounter an accident and die completely. So he left behind a contingency plan. Empyrean Jihong, wait a moment. We are willing to follow you. A divine king shouted, but it was already too late. These were experts that had just come from the world of the living, wanting to witness the great event that was going to happen next. Jihong crossed the sea of primal chaos and successfully came over. He suppressed his own realm, fearing that he would ignite the danger of the great abyss. His true body stood in the primal chaos, his eyes incomparably cold. How could he endure the great humiliation he suffered today? He had to kill that native and seize the treasure. You can't leave. I've already come into contact with your source aura. I believe that I'll be able to find you after walking through this cosmos and make you wish you were dead. Jihong's handsome face was full of coldness. He had once sworn that he would humiliate Chu Feng for 10,000 years. He couldn't let him die so easily. Otherwise, how could he resolve the hatred in his heart? The half-step Empyrean had arrived. He hadn't even truly stepped into the Een realm, but he had already caused this cosmos to rumble and shake endlessly. The order on many vital planets was resonating. This was an extremely terrifying, unforeseen event. If the little Een realm was compared to the great Yang realm, it was nothing more than a drop in the ocean. It was extremely insignificant, like a speck of dust. After Jihong personally rushed over, he was sure that this was only a mass grave and not the legendary Great Een realm. I'm here. He laughed coldly, carrying boundless killing intent. With a chi, an incarnation rushed out from his body and was suppressed to the Illuminator level. It walked into the Een realm starry sea, just like that, to kill Chu Feng. With a buzz, a second incarnation appeared and also entered the little Een realm's cosmos. The stars shifted with a single step, and the vast starry sea retreated behind him. His true body stood in the sea of primal chaos and didn't go over. He believed that even if there were unforeseen events and accidents happened, nothing would happen to him. As long as his true body was fine, everything was fine. There was a ball of fire burning in his heart, and he really wanted to bathe the Een realm in blood. If he wasn't afraid of the great abyss, there was nothing he wouldn't dare to do. Chu Feng, come out. I've already lost my patience. I'd rather abandon my incarnation and start a massacre today. I'll bathe in blood everywhere. Unless you come out, I'll throw caution to the wind. Ji Hong shouted, shaking the starry sky. His two incarnations walked everywhere and appeared on many vital planets. Their voices rumbled. At this time, even a corner of the great Yang realm had a territory of hundreds of millions of miles. It was vast and boundless, with majestic mountains and torrential rivers. Pure essence flowed on this desolate land. Tao ancestor matter was occasionally seen. Immortal mist lingered, and the mountains and rivers were incomparably magnificent and beautiful. Today, a piece of news came and caused heated discussion everywhere. The god ranked 8th in the Yang realm, Qi Ming, had died. He fell to the Yin realm and was killed by the natives there. Not only that, but the Taiwu's direct disciple, half-step Emperor Ji Hong, was almost killed. In the end, he had to rely on his master to save him. Is that for real? Didn't they say that it was just a mass grave? It actually killed a god-level evolutionary genius from the Yang realm. Even Ji Hong suffered a great loss. Some places in the Yang realm became lively. Of course, most areas were very calm. Even this kind of news didn't stir up any waves. Compared to the boundless and majestic Yang realm, this little matter was nothing. For example, some powerful evolutionary sects didn't care about such a small matter at all. They paid attention to the great tomb buried in some mountains and rivers. It might be the resting place of a prehistoric empress, or perhaps there was someone still alive in the coffin underground. There were also people paying attention. Was the golden gate in the sky going to open again? What kind of great commotion would it cause this time? There were also people paying attention to the residents of the Almighty. Would there be a final battle? There were also people paying attention to some of the rankings in the Yang realm. A certain famous evolutionary research organization had recently published an article that climbed into the top 3 of the evolutionary academic report rankings overnight. It explained a key problem on the path of evolution and seemed to have been solved. The Yang realm was colorful. There were dynasties that had existed for hundreds of millions of years, almighties that had lived for a long time, and evolutionary sects that dared to attack the forbidden areas of the Yang realm. They all had their own unique trajectories and didn't care about the matters of the Yang realm. However, in certain specific areas, the defeat of the people of the Yang realm in the Yang realm still caused a commotion. Chu Feng hadn't entered the Yang realm yet, but he had already caused a stir and had a certain degree of fame in a small area. In a broken universe, all kinds of evolvers were paying attention. Do you guys think Celestial Venerable Ji Hong can succeed? A god asked. Although Ji Hong was a half-step Celestial Venerable, many people were very respectful when they addressed him, directly calling him Celestial Venerable. Whether or not he can bring back the treasure, Celestial Venerable Ji Hong will most likely vent his anger in the Yang realm. He won't be kind. As people discussed, the atmosphere in the Yang realm was tense. Every race knew that another big shot had come from the Yang realm. However, Celestial Venerable Ji Hong came to denounce them and was also horrified. When he passed by the abyss, his hair stood on end. He didn't say a word and circled around it from afar. One of his master's Tao bodies had died there. How could not be scared now? Earlier, he had wanted to make a move and wash some places with blood, but after coming here, he became silent and didn't dare to have the same thoughts as before. On Earth, Chu Feng was talking to the stone fox, telling him what kind of commotion he had caused. The stone fox Celestial Venerable said, "Yes, if he dares to come here, it's useless even if his true body doesn't step foot in the sea of primal chaos. Once that person in the abyss makes a move, he will undoubtedly die. His body and soul will be destroyed." The little vermilion bird was bright red. It was on Earth with the stone fox. Recently, it had been very relaxed and content. It felt that this world didn't have any strange substances, and even its breathing was comfortable. He's coming to Earth, but why isn't there any movement from the abyss? The stone fox was astonished and had a grave expression. After all, its condition was terrible. Chu Feng sighed. The worst had happened. There was no movement from the abyss, so he could only go on his way and reincarnate. Senior, we'll part ways here. It might be time for me to go to the world of the living. I don't know if there's a chance for things to turn for the better. Chu Feng sighed. The stone fox said, "Don't worry. Even though I'm crippled, I don't fear a half-step celestial venerable. He won't dare massacre the earth. Chu Feng, get your ass out here. If you don't show yourself, I'll massacre this life planet." Ji Hong had arrived. His powerful incarnation passed through the starry sea and arrived in outer space. Moreover, 2 of his incarnations had arrived. It wasn't just one. "You want to massacre this place?" The stone fox spoke. His true body was on Mount Kunlun as he gazed into outer space. "En? It's you, Fox Celestial Venerable." Ji Hong was shocked. How could he see this person here? He felt that it was inconceivable. There was too much information contained within. It was too terrifying. Soon after, he discovered the stone fox's state. A smile appeared on the corners of his lips as he relaxed quite a bit. "I won't massacre this place out of respect for Fox Celestial Venerable, but I must bring that native away. Ji Hong, your grandpa is here. Get your ass over here, or else grandpa is leaving. I won't play with you anymore." Chu Feng shouted. His voice transmitted from the purgatory space beneath Mount Kunlun. Boom! One of Ji Hong's incarnations rushed in and entered the purgatory. As soon as he entered, he felt a chill all over his body. It was a bone-piercing chill, and his heart immediately sank. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of the radiant city of death. He gasped when he saw everything here. Even though he hadn't personally experienced it, he had heard of purgatory. He had never thought that he would actually come here. Chu Feng held the stone box in his hand. He had already passed through the millstone and was standing on the path of reincarnation. His corporeal body was intact as he taunted, "Little brat Ji Hong, Grandpa is leaving. We'll fight again in the world of the living. However, you have to be careful. When I go to reincarnate, the good days of your extreme martial lineage will come to an end. All of you will die." Ji Hong's expression was gloomy. He was extremely fearful of reincarnators and naturally wasn't willing to see Chu Feng reincarnate. At the same time, he was also astonished. Chu Feng's corporeal body was fine, so it didn't make sense for him to reincarnate just like that. Ji Hong's gaze was cold. He saw that Chu Feng was still standing in front of the millstone and felt that he could give it a try. Perhaps he could shock the other party to death, turning extreme joy into sorrow and dying without a burial. It would be best if he could send the stone box flying. At the thought of this, he retreated far enough and was almost out of the purgatory space. Then, he attacked the millstone in the radiant city of death with a boom. He wanted to trigger a backlash that would affect Chu Feng and turn him into fine powder. Ji Hong's idea was very malicious. If he really succeeded, Chu Feng would naturally be in a miserable state. However, Ji Hong had underestimated this place. Even though he was a half-step heavenly venerable, he didn't know much about purgatory and the path of reincarnation. Just think about it. Even heavenly venerable stone fox was afraid of this place and didn't know much. How could a half-step heavenly venerable understand so thoroughly? If his master Taiwu was here, he definitely wouldn't dare to act like this. This palm strike was very smooth. Endless runes and light flew out. The surging energy struck the millstone and shook the entire radiant city of death, causing the reincarnation road to inexplicably shake. Chu Feng's hair stood on end. He immediately hid in the stone box to protect himself. In truth, Ji Hong had overestimated himself. The energy from his palm strike couldn't cause the slightest bit of damage to this place. It was just a slight tremor that couldn't even affect Chu Feng. However, the final result was a terrifying change that shook both ancient and modern times. It was enough to frighten gods and devils to death. A giant black hand stretched out from the reincarnation road, passing through the radiant city of death and slowly grasping outwards. Ji Hong's scalp went numb. He turned and fled. At this moment, Chu Feng slightly opened the stone box and saw this scene through a small crack. Goosebumps rose all over his body. On Mount Kunlun, the stone fox was originally very calm, but now its hair stood on end. Then it decisively jumped up and began to run. It felt as if its scalp was about to explode, and its heart was incomparably terrified. The little vermilion bird was dumbfounded. It shouted, "Grandpa Stone Fox, why are you moving? And why are you running so fast?" The stone fox grabbed the little vermilion bird and brought it away. It ran even faster and shouted, "I'm trembling with fear. I'm so scared that I can move." Chapter 10:10. Was this even possible? The little vermilion bird was speechless. This Grandpa Stone Fox hadn't moved for almost 100 years, yet he was actually able to jump up and run so quickly. The more powerful one was, the more they feared the land of reincarnation. The little vermilion bird didn't sense anything, but the stone fox felt his scalp go numb. "You scare me to death. I can only run." Now, it was carrying the little vermilion bird as it ran. In a flash, it had gone from Earth to the starry skies. Moreover, it immediately saw Ji Hong's other incarnation. Only one incarnation had entered the purgatory. The second one was waiting outside. "How unlucky!" cried the stone fox. It was in a bad mood. If Ji Hong hadn't acted so recklessly, why would it need to run? Ji Hong's incarnation had already sensed something and reacted quickly. It used its most powerful divine technique and fled decisively. Boom! Earth Kunlun. A loud explosion shook the heaven and earth. Fragments of the great Tao danced in the air as if a river of time had appeared. It whistled out of Kunlun with the traces of time. That was an aura that had evolved into a terrifying phenomenon. In truth, it was the aura of a supreme evolver surging. An ultimate character was moving, triggering all sorts of miraculous scenes in the void. Golden lotuses appeared everywhere and took root in the void. Auspicious colors descended from the heavens, and sweet springs gushed out from the earth. There were also ethereal sounds, as immortal palaces from ancient times appeared and hung high in the sky. A modeled painting of the passage of time unfurled, as if an old scene from a prehistoric era had appeared. This was a type of power, a type of surging aura. As a result, Ji Hong's first incarnation almost collapsed. His hair was disheveled, and his body was covered in blood. He was extremely terrified as he escaped from the purgatory. The large hand slowly reached out and chased after him. Its movements weren't very fast, and it hadn't even touched him yet. However, the aura and the phenomenon pressured him to the point where he was about to explode. Ji Hong let out a mournful howl. He felt that he couldn't hold on any longer. Not to mention being slapped by the large black hand. Just the pressure from behind him was enough to make him collapse. What kind of mighty power was this? He had heard from Tai Wu that the waters on the path of reincarnation were too deep. Even the celestial venerables were afraid and didn't dare set foot in it. Even the legendary powerhouses of the Yang realm were afraid. Any creature that dared to have such thoughts on the path of reincarnation was unimaginable. They could leave their names in the history of evolution. His scalp was about to explode. Could that black hand be some ultimate creature from the history of evolution? Evolvers of this level had long since surpassed the understanding of the common people. Experts who dared to gamble on the path of reincarnation were definitely world-shaking. Ji Hong thought of his master. Every time the path of reincarnation was mentioned, his expression would be solemn. There would be reverence in the depths of his eyes, but there was also an indescribable, complicated feeling. Now he regretted it. Why did he have to be so rash? Ji Hong knew that it was because he saw Chu Feng about to reincarnate and leave with the supreme treasure in his hands that he couldn't sit still and wanted to keep the stone box. However, how could he have foreseen that not only did he fail to kill Chu Feng, but he also brought about a fatal disaster for himself? However, he was also a little glad that this was only an incarnation, so it didn't matter even if it was killed. His true body was hiding at the edge of the Yin realm universe, hiding in the primal chaos. He would sense it in advance and immediately escape. Jihong's thoughts spun like lightning. He thought of many things, but now he was also scared. His mind was blank. After he rushed out of the purgatory, the seemingly slow hand behind him covered him and slowly closed. The pitch-black hand didn't harm a single blade of grass or tree of Kunlun. It reached into space and grabbed Jihong's incarnation. It was too simple and too violent. It directly crushed him into powder. Scare me to death. In the starry sky, the stone fox shivered. Then it turned around and fled again. Moreover, it shouted at a figure in front of it, "Jihong, stop right there." Jihong's second incarnation was really as anxious as a stray dog as it fled for its life. "Why are you chasing after me?" Jihong's incarnation roared angrily. The stone fox didn't pay attention to him. Evolvers of their level were too conspicuous. Now, it didn't seek to surpass the limit of speed. It was fine as long as it surpassed Jihong. Swoosh, 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 the stone fox chased after it, passing through a large expanse of starry sky. Behind it, the black hand still looked slow. It entered the sea of stars and covered over. Almost in an instant, the stone fox surpassed Jihong's second incarnation. The little vermilion bird was dumbstruck. Was this still the grandpa fox she knew? Normally, he was like a clay bodhisattva, not to mention running. He couldn't even speak or move. Today, his legs were more nimble than anyone else's. He had left Jihong's incarnation in the dust. "Grandpa Stone Fox, we didn't provoke that black hand. Why are you running?" The little vermilion bird asked. "I won't run 10,000 times. Just in case. I'll run faster than Jihong first," the stone fox answered. With a swoosh, he crossed the sea of stars and completely disappeared. Motherf asterisk Kerr. Jihong felt his blood run cold. At the same time, he wanted to curse the stone fox. Boom! Behind him, the black hand reached into the depths of the starry sky. On this day, the realm universe was shaken. Countless people in various places saw a black hand cover the sky and earth. It reached into the sea of stars. Nothing could stop it. It was hunting the terrifying Evolver from the Yang realm. However, along the way, it didn't damage a single planet or injure a single creature. It stretched out gently and didn't harm the innocent. Bang! The black hand looked slow, but it was even more terrifying. Ren Jihong raised his speed to the limit and stepped into the celestial venerable domain, but he still couldn't escape. The moment the black hand closed, his second incarnation was crushed and turned into ashes. Moreover, it didn't stop and continued to cover forward. In the depths of the sea of stars, the stone fox felt a chill run through his body. He was horrified. Could it be that the hand had really targeted him? He felt that something was wrong and quickly changed directions. Then, he discovered that the hand didn't change directions with him. Instead, it was moving straight toward the edge of the universe. Its target wasn't him. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Fortunately, it didn't target me. The stone fox stopped and patted his chest with a look of lingering fear. The little vermilion bird was still confused. Moreover, his focus wasn't on the black hand, but on the stone fox. "Grandpa Stone Fox, have you recovered from your illness? You finally recovered and can move." The stone fox said, "I was just startled. I jumped up and entered the starry sky. I haven't recovered yet." The little vermilion bird blinked his large eyes with a look of disdain. Moments later, he transformed into his human form. His little face was deathly pale as he stared at the large hand reaching into the starry sky. He was truly too adorable. Only now did he understand what kind of terrifying event was happening in the realm universe. At the edge of the universe, in the primal chaos, Jihong's true body had long since sensed something and fled. With the celestial venerable's decree in hand, he split open the primal chaos and turned into a beam of flowing light as he fled for his life. In truth, he had already sensed something when the unforeseen event occurred in the purgatory and fled at the first instance. Even if the black hand was unimaginable and could cover the sky with a single hand, it still gave him a certain amount of time. Now, He was almost about to cross the primal chaos sea and escape into the broken universe. An entity of this level could move unhindered to the ends of the world in the blink of an eye, especially in a desperate situation. This is Celestial Venerable Ji Hong. He's returned with the Celestial Venerable's decree. Those guarding this side of the broken universe were astonished. It hadn't been a long time, yet Ji Hong had returned. Some divine kings and divine-level evolvers who rushed over from the Yang realm were astonished. Could it be that the matter had been completed and Celestial Venerable Ji Hong had successfully brought back that ultimate treasure? Master, save me. However, what they didn't expect was that after Ji Hong returned, he still had the Celestial Venerable's decree in his hand and began to shout loudly for help. After that, everyone saw a terrifying scene that made their souls tremble. This scene was forever branded in their minds and would be difficult to erase in this lifetime. A large black hand covered the sky and stretched out from the primal chaos in the direction of the Een Realm universe, grabbing toward Ji Hong's true body that was currently fleeing. Ji Hong's heart trembled. Normally, he was high and mighty and accepted the worship of the gods, but now he was worse than a stray dog and even more terrified. Boom! At the last moment, he took out the Celestial Venerable's decree and fired out the golden decree that Tai Wu had given him. It blasted toward that large black hand to block it. Something that made people tremble happened. After the golden Celestial Venerable's decree came into contact with that large black hand, it broke apart inch by inch and was rapidly annihilated, turning into fragments that dissipated. Ji Hong's true body was grabbed by the black hand and crushed, turning into a bloody mist before being burned to ashes. The mournful screams stopped abruptly, making everyone feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. They felt a chill from head to toe. That was a half-step Celestial Venerable, and he died just like that? What kind of terrifying creature was that? It chased over from the Een realm and easily crushed Ji Hong to death with just a large black hand. This was really too terrifying. Many people would never forget the scene they had seen in their entire lives, and it was frozen in this instant. Buzz! The large black hand shook lightly, scattering the ball of blood and soul light in the distance and crushing it into ashes. That was a contingency plan that Ji Hong had left behind before. It was a ball of true blood and soul light. Even if he perished in the Een realm, he could use it to revive. But now the so-called revival method had been used up. Ji Hong had died very thoroughly and very cleanly. Before Ji Hong's last trace of obsession dissipated, he had a kind of understanding. The so-called large black hand looked very slow and leisurely chased after him, but it actually wanted to do so. It wanted to erase everything about him. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.